All right, everybody. Tom? Everyone, why don't we get started? So welcome to the Boston MPO meeting of April 3rd. We'll start with introductions. So David, take it away.
Absolutely. MassDOT seat 1.
Steve Wolf will represent Secretary and CEO of MassDOT. Monica Tippett's not here.
Thank you. Good morning. MassDOT seat 2.
Yeah.
Morning, John. MassDOT Highway Division. The MBTA.
Josh Ostroff, representing General Manager filling in the MBTA.
Thank you. Regional Transportation Authorities Metro West Transit Authority.
Good morning, this is Tyler Tarasi representing Administrator Jim Nee for the MWRTA present.
Good morning, Tyler. Massport. I believe Massport will join us a little bit late. And then MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with MAPC.
Good morning. We now have the MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning, Hannah Swolikowski, MBTA Advisory Board.
Morning. Advisory Council.
Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council here. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Boston seat 1.
Good morning, Jen Rowe, representing Mayor Michelle Wu in the City of Boston.
Good morning. City of Boston seat 2.
Good morning, Nayeli Rodriguez, also representing the City of Boston and Mayor Michelle Wu.
Morning. At large city, City of Everett. Morning. At large city, City of Newton.
Good morning, David Kozis representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller in the City of Newton.
Morning. At large town of Brookline.
Good morning, Erin Chute representing Town of Brookline and Chairperson Bernard Green.
Morning. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, representing City of Somerville, Mayor Ballantyne in the Intercore Committee.
Morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard representing Select Board Member Fran Arsenal from the Town of Acton for the Magic Subregion.
Morning. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti representing Metro West and the City of Framingham, Mayor Charles Ziski.
Morning. North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Wynn representing Mayor Cahill for the North Shore Task Force.
Hi, Darlene. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
Hi, Chris Diorio representing House Select Board Chair Erwin Nessoff.
Hello, Chris. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson representing SWAP and Rentham.
Welcome, welcome. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Steve Olenoff, representing the Trick Subregion, Town of Norwood.
Thank you, Steve. Final two, Federal Highway Administration.
Anthony Jones for Federal Highways Administration.
Sorry, could you repeat one more time, please?
Anthony Jones for the Federal Highways Administration.
Thank you, Anthony. Welcome. And then the Federal Transit Administration. That calls the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David, and welcome again to everyone in attendance today. We'll move to agenda item 2, which is the chair's report. Oh, actually, I got to read the non-discrimination. So sorry about that. You are invited to participate in a transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, and national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender, identity or expression, veteran status, or background. And then our accessibility statement, this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Erin McGuire, MPO staff at emaguire@ctps.org or 857-702-3681, or also via the chat box. Guidelines for the meeting. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After the roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and the window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants, which is me. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. All right, so as I said, we did introductions. Thank you, David. We'll now move on to the chair's report, which I believe I have none. So I'll move right to agenda item 3, which is executive director's report. Tegan, please take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Tegan Tyke. I'm the Executive Director of the staff to the Boston Region MPO. Welcome on this dreary morning, but at least by the time you leave, it should be a little bit warmer. So I hope it'll be worth it for those of you who attended in person. This is our second in-person, opportunity for in-person hybrid format meeting in a row. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today for those online and in person. Next slide, please. I have a couple of announcements for today, and then I'll just give some context for today's agenda so everyone's ready for what we're talking about, and then highlight what's coming next for the next meeting. Next slide, please. So first, I'm very happy to say, hopefully you've already all heard, but the open meeting law provisions for remote meetings has been extended 2 years now to June 2027. So going forward from this point on, meetings will be hybrid or will be remote unless otherwise explicitly stated. So the next meeting on April 17th will be remote, and going forward, unless you hear from us, please do anticipate another opportunity in person / hybrid format, at least for the annual meeting coming up in November. The same also goes for our committee meetings going forward, with the exception being today's UPWP or Unified Planning Work Program committee meeting. That will be held at 2:30 after today's meeting. It will be in the large conference room in the MPO office suite 2150. That will be, it will also be a hybrid option, so you can participate virtually, but if you choose to attend in person, and we would very much welcome you, you may stay in the room after this meeting if you are unfamiliar with the security process, and we will walk you through that as staff. If you need to leave the room briefly before doing that, please just let somebody know and come back, and then we will make sure to walk you through the security process. But you will need to get a badge and go through the security and then go into our offices there. So staff will help anybody who'd like to be in person. Next slide, please. So for today's agenda, after some of our usual business, we have a longer scheduled meeting today with a break for 10 minutes after some of the items that we have on this list. So after some of our usual business, we will have an action item related to an MBTA service equity analysis work scope. Sophie Fox will present this MBTA funded scope of work to look at the impacts of phase 1 of bus network redesign service changes, particularly to ensure that there are not adverse effects on protected populations. Next, we will have, I apologize, this isn't listed as an action item, but we will have another action item related to Amendment 10 of the current federal fiscal year 25 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program. So Ethan Lapointe will remind us what is on that amendment, but essentially it programs new transit projects in this current year, federal fiscal year 2025, due to space that was made in the MPO's regional target program from delays of other projects in this current federal fiscal year 25 year. Then we will hear from the MBTA. Mike Malia will talk about the MBTA's CIP process, which drives the selection of the MBTA's investments, which are then incorporated into the Transportation Improvement Program, which you will be sending out for public comment, we hope, at the next meeting on the 17th. After that, we'll have a short break, followed by the longest agenda item that we have, an action item related to discussing the programming scenarios for the MPO's regional target program for the federal fiscal year 26 to 30 TIP. So the objective will be for you all to discuss enough to select a final scenario to guide the development of the draft TIP, which will be, again, anticipated to be released for public comment at the next meeting on April 17th. Next slide, please. So again, that meeting on the 17th is our next meeting, will be virtual. We will again have, in addition to the release of the new tip, some various items that will make the agenda longer than a normal 2-hour meeting. So if you could please save time for that, we would greatly appreciate it. We will, in addition to that tip conversation, have a presentation by MassDOT on their capital investment program, similar to the MBTA presentation today, which again guides investments that are included in the tip. We might have a further update as well from the MBTA on the types of investments being included in the tip. And then finally, we'll have an update on the MPO's Vision Zero work. So we'll look forward to seeing you at that meeting too. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tegan. Does anyone have any questions for Tegan? All right, thanks, Tegan.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the MPO today? Sure, go ahead, Bill.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Bill Degnan with the City of Cambridge Transportation Planning. And I appreciate your time this morning and having public comment on TIP projects. I'm here to talk about a couple of Cambridge projects in the federal fiscal year FY26. At the last meeting, myself and my colleague Andreas Wolf were here to talk about 2 Cambridge projects, the Cambridge Street project and the Fitchburg Crossing Bicycle Pedestrian Bridge project. At that time, the MPO included the Cambridge Street project in some of the TIP scenarios for FY26. Since that time, we've had further discussions about the Cambridge Street project, both internally and with MassDOT, and have decided to deprioritize that and to fund that project in other ways going forward. What we are asking, though, is for you to consider programming our bicycle pedestrian bridge, the Fitchburg Crossing project, in the FY26 TIP for the same amount of $2 million. As you may recall, we did apply for the design pilot project for the Fitchburg Crossing design, and this is a design project. At the time, we did not need money from the MPO for the design pilot because we had applied for an RCN grant and received that grant in the amount of $2.4 million plus a $600,000 city match. We have signed agreements with FHWA and MassDOT and obligated $400,000 of that money plus the $600,000 match, enough to get us through the NEPA process. Right now, though, with federal review of different competitive grant projects, including ones that are oriented towards bicycles in low-income communities, the status of those unobligated funds is really up in the air right now. We have gone through a designer selection process and have a recommended design team, but the city is nervous about moving ahead signing a contract, given the uncertainty of that $2 million of funding. It's for that reason I'm here today to ask you to consider including the Fitchburg Crossing project in place of the Cambridge Street project for $2 million in FY26. Here.
Eric.
And Bill, that's for design.
This is for design. And we have all of the agreements in place. We've done a lot of work with MassDOT and FHWA to sign those agreements, have the scope of work approved. So this is a very low risk project by including that $2 million in this design contract.
Okay. And the Cambridge Street project was also 2 million of design roughly?
That was construction. That was
construction. Okay.
That was potentially construction money that would be in place of a federal earmark that was expiring at the end of this federal fiscal year. So this would have been having an additional year plus for that. But because of right of way and other things, we feel like it's too complicated and too high a risk project to include in FY26.
And this Fitchburg Crossing, that is different than the Dennehy Park connection, right?
No, that's the same. So the idea is to create a bicycle pedestrian bridge over the MBTA's Fitchburg line, connecting the Ringe Avenue neighborhood and the Ringe Towers, which is one of the lowest income census tracts in the city, over to Dennehy Park, one of the largest open spaces in the city and a big recreational facility for a lot of teams and things like that.
Thank you.
All right, any other board members have questions? Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and correct me if I mistook this, but that at the TIP committee meeting last Thursday, I believe you were asking for 750,000 for design for the Dennehy Park connector. Has that changed, or did I mishear that?
I think maybe I misspoke, but no, it was 2 million for each project. So we're asking for 2 million for design for the Fitchburg crossing also.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions board members have for Bill? Sure, you have one?
Sorry, I assume that I assume we're gonna like talk about this project later some more, but I guess my one question, and we could, discuss an hour later, would just be what happens if, with the Trump administration, that the grants then come, but at a later time, I assume we would make like a TIP amendment to like reprogram these funds.
I think we'd be open to whatever worked if it worked such that we could take advantage of the grant funds. And there could be a TIP amendment and something else could go in there. I think, I think we're open to whatever.
Yeah, I think your point, Eric, is we're going to have to revisit a whole bunch of stuff, so we'll just wait and see. All right, any other questions for Bill? All right, let's go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. Just a quick one. In terms of whether you get the grant or it's funded through the TIP, is there any different process working with Mass DOT? And can you continue to use the procurement process that you've already put in place, or will you need to revisit that?
I think it would all be the same. We have not started the permitting process yet. If we get some assurance that we can have funds, we'll sign a design contract and start that process. And then one of the first things we'll be doing is, in addition to starting public engagement, is starting that NEPA permitting process.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Bill. Are there any more members of the public like to address MPO that are in the room? All right, so I know we have 3 at least online. So could Alida Leza please go ahead?
Thank you. My name is Aleida Leza, and I am a resident in Belmont. I come before you to bring up the issue of the Belmont Community Path. And the basis for that is my own personal experience of following this for 8 years. The recent appearance of the niche engineers in town in the last 2 weeks, and on public record documents that I secure from both Belmont and Mass DOT. The first issue is minor, and it is that the 25% design for this project was actually submitted on November 3rd, 2021, and not on January 5th, 2022, as MassDOT has it. The second point is far more important, and it is to point out that this project is still at the 25% stage, design stage. It has not passed to the 75%, and that is why about 2 weeks ago, the 75% plans that were submitted, I believe in February 19th, were rejected. And so that means that this project has been at the 25% design stage now for 41 months, 3.5 years. As far as I can tell, the sticking point is the bridge sketch plans. They have been rejected 4 times. And I think the problem here might be that they want to put the tunnel in the same place where the MBTA has an amazing array of equipment, including high voltage, to regulate the trains, both control the trains and for safety. And for example, to give you an example of what I think is a potential problem that they haven't solved, is that last summer they buried the positive control cables 5 feet below the rails. And yet the tunnel has to have a ceiling 3 feet below the rails to avoid a high water table. Obviously, there's a contradiction here. And so the new niche engineer who's in charge of this now, he was recently assigned, has a very aggressive schedule. He has a deadline of September 2026 to complete this project and put it out for bid right around election time. And the problem that I see is that in order to be able to push this through, he's calling what he says all hands on deck to put pressure on MassDOT and MBTA. He would need to have the review time shortened to 30 days. And as far as I can tell, have no comments given on whatever he submits. He has to sail right through to make the September 2026 deadline. And so I am, and by the way, he still doesn't have the SU Class B, the survey. So he really has no idea what he really is facing when it comes to this very congested MBTA site where they want to put a tunnel. And so I come before you because I'm very concerned that because of this rush, what I see is going to be an extreme pressure on everybody at your end, that some good engineering is going to be sacrificed to speed. So anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me this platform.
All right, anyone have any questions for Ms. Leza? All right, thank you. The next one up that we have online is Pam Helnick. All right, we can come back to Pam. Is Sheila Page still on?
Hi, can you not hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it didn't let me unmute. I'm sorry about that. I'm Pam Helnick. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development in the town of Hudson. I just wanted to, first of all, I want to thank the MPO for reconsidering Hudson's Mass Central Rail Trail design project and including it on the tip scenarios, all the tip scenarios for FY26. Hudson is really excited about getting the opportunity to move forward with this project. We think it's a great regional project. The first part of the Mass Central Rail Trail in Hudson, coming from Sudbury, is about to begin right now. DCR is, as we speak, preparing to start paving that area to merge with the Assabet River Rail Trail. And then we have already done with a Mass Trails grant, a feasibility study on the next section of the rail trail, including survey and wetlands delineation and some structural analysis. We've got a lot of momentum going. We've got a lot of town support. CPC, Community Preservation Committee, has already allocated matching funds, which has been approved by town meeting. And we're really excited to continue the momentum with the design of the next section of the Mass Central Rail Trail, which will go through our very popular historic downtown. So, yeah, so thank you. Thank you for reconsidering our project. That's all I really wanted to say.
All right, thank you, Pam. Is any of the board members have a question? All right, thank you, Pam. Is Sheila Page there?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Sheila Page. You all know me from Lexington's Route 225, Route 4 reconstruction project. I want to thank you for hanging with us through this long process, and they are happy to be moving from the long range transportation plan to the TIP in 2030. So we ask for your support. But now I'm actually here on behalf of the town of Wellesley, and I'm asking the board to approve Amendment 10, which provides funding for accessibility improvements to the Wellesley Square MBTA station, a commuter rail station, and the Natick commuter rail station. It makes both of these stations accessible between the inbound and outbound tracks. Amendment 10 also provides funding to the growing MWRTA system. Both the MWRTA system, MWRTA and the MBTA commuter rail are essential for the Metro West community in the residents' daily lives, as well as it's important to improve our local economy and then our greater state economy. So we very much appreciate the board's support on this amendment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. Anyone have any questions? All right, thank you, Sheila. And now I believe Gardy Deserlu also is signed up to speak.
Glorious morning. My name is Gardy Derulo. I own Craft Food Halls and Revolution Hall in Lexington, Massachusetts. I thank you for allowing me to be here. As one of the only retail establishments in the area, this is commenting on the Complete Streets project. We're in the Hartwell area, and we think it would be amazing for revitalizing that area of Lexington. We're expecting a couple of multifamily developments on 7 and 17 Hartwell Avenue, and there's a large possibility that a few more will be coming. And we think it'll be a safe way to connect the roadways. The roadway project will definitely connect Bedford residents, which would allow, obviously, a retail establishment like mine to continue to hire younger kids, high school kids. We already work with the high school programs and internship programs as well. Many of them don't have vehicles. They need to walk or they need to bike. It'll connect as well the bikeway on McGuire Road area as well. So this is just our representation of supporting the Complete Street project in Lexington. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Gardy. Anyone else want to speak and address the MPO today, either in the room or do we have anyone else, Dave? Are we online or no? We're good. All right. All right. So with that, I think we're done with public comments and we'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is committee chairs reports. I believe there are 2. Jen, I think you're the first, so take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee met last Thursday, March 27th. We spent some time at the outset discussing this board's motion at the previous MPO meeting, which had directed the committee to recommend a set of expectations for projects programmed in the TIP Regional Target Program. I shared an initial take at the goals of this exercise, namely to incentivize good communication, collaboration, and progress towards project delivery, and also mitigate risk to the overall program. I also outlined 2 categories of expectations that I've heard discussed or to some degree are already in place. The first category being around information sharing, and these expectations would clarify how to keep a project in good standing after it's programmed on the TIP, and in doing so, maintain its priority over unprogrammed projects in future TIP development cycles. The second category of expectations would be around design progress, which would kind of put some clarity around the milestones a project must reach in both to enter the TIP and then what additional milestones it must achieve to stay in its initially programmed federal fiscal year in each subsequent TIP development cycle. The committee will pick this topic up again at its next meeting, which I expect to be on May 15th at 1 p.m. I think we'll probably finalize that and send a notice out. In the meantime, I did offer to meet individually with committee members, and I'd extend that invitation to other members of the MPO board as well. But wanted to update the full board about that conversation. Moving on from that topic, the committee then reviewed the revised programming scenarios, 2A, 2B, and 2C, which those 3 you also see before you today. All 3 of those build upon initial scenario 1A that this board selected 2 weeks ago. Ultimately, the committee voted to recommend scenario 2A, which adds 4 new projects in federal fiscal year 2030, and also partially funds Chelsea's Park and Pearl Street in that year. Some members did speak to how 2A contributes to a more proportional regional funding distribution by programming a couple projects in the Magic subregion. And there was also some appreciation for how it introduces less risk to the overall program by featuring some smaller projects and projects with recent cost estimates. That said, the committee heard from representatives from the city of Lynn advocating against how all of those three scenarios delayed the Western Avenue project 2 years. And also from the city of Cambridge in support of programming funding for the Dennehy Park Connector project. In the end, 2 members voted no on the vote on 2A, 2 members abstained, and 7 members voted yes. Several members that were abstained or voted no did indicate that they might need some more time to think through the scenarios. The yeses did prevail, so the TIP committee's recommendation to this board is scenario, or stands at scenario 2A. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, Eric?
Thank you, Jen. And I just want to say thank you for the work that you do to manage the TIPR committee and to chair it. I think it's great. One thing that I'd be interested in discussing either today or at a later time is whether we want the TIPR committee to actually like make motions and formal recommendations. I feel like when we set that committee up, it was more of a space to sort of dig into projects more, to talk about policy, talk about process. And I just worry that if we get into the routine of being like, that group is going to make formal recommendations to the big MPO board, that then we're in a process where proponents come in thinking, oh, well, my project is like, has been endorsed. And now if we say, well, no, we're disregarding that, we're doing something that people will feel like, oh, I'm feeling a little like jerked around. Whereas I feel like that committee is really a place to kind of like bring information, but not necessarily take like formal votes. So I want to put that out there.
Go, Jen.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Just wanted to ask a kind of clarifying question. Do you mean vote that you're kind of questioning whether we should take votes on scenarios or votes on process engagement readiness? Like, because I feel like there's a distinction there.
I think scenarios, like actual project votes.
Gotcha.
To me, that would be like voting on scenarios and projects feels like that was not the intention of the TIPR committee. It was more about like process policy and also just like a place to like get more information about projects.
Thank you.
Others have thoughts? Aaron?
Erin Chu, Town of Brookline. So I'm a member of the TIPR committee, and last year I felt very much that this group actually sent some directives back to TIPR to come forward with recommendations around the various scenarios. So I agree and hear what you're saying, Eric, in terms of not wanting it to seem like that's the process where the decisions are made, because I think that is really important. It's this body that does that. But it's so complex, and I think we all appreciate the work that Ethan does. It does seem helpful to have some review and recommendations that come forward from that body to the greater TIP, and potentially the wording of what that recommendation or vote is, we can think about, but it seemed as though it was requested last year. And frankly, I would think it would be helpful to the overall MPO to have some of that information before them.
Others? I know we're going to talk about later this morning and probably early afternoon, but anyone else right now? Yeah, Tom.
Just real quick, I definitely understand where you're coming from, Eric, but I know other committees have usually go forward with recommendations to the board. I know like the MOU committee that I chaired, we did that. So I definitely want to have more of a conversation on it. And I do remember, like Erin said, That last year, I think that was what the request was, to come forward with some recommendations. So, but I think, I'm definitely willing to talk about it some more, but typically subcommittees do extend recommendations that I can remember anyway.
Go ahead, Eric.
Just to clarify, I'm not saying that I don't think the committee should make like recommendations. I just think we should have, personally, I think we should not vote on like scenarios, like actual project recommendations. I would be more supportive of the committee focusing on process, like policy, like those things, but then not actually saying like the committee, again, it's a smaller group. So, with 2 people abstaining, a couple of people voting no, like I think it passed with like 3 people voting for it. So then it becomes this thing where it's like, oh, that's the recommendation that went to and then I just worry that if that in the future, I could see a situation where proponents think like, oh, like my I'm coming to the meeting because I've been recommended. And then if we change it, it feels like the process is a little blurry. Oh, and now I have to come to the Tipper meeting and I have to like get the vote there. So I just want to, that it was a surprise to me that we were taking votes like on scenarios at that meeting. So I think it's something to think about.
Dennis?
Yeah, I would recommend that we put this on a future agenda so we can have a kind of further discussion. So we give direction to the committee of what the do's and don'ts are.
Makes sense. Anyone else? All right, so I'm sure we'll talk more. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Just so Josh Rostoff with the MBTA and not a member of the Tipper Committee, but we try to be represented there. It feels just as an observer for the past year to these meetings, I feel like a lot of the process recommendations and, for example, adopting thresholds or standards might be more useful than actually recommending specific scenarios. Particularly when the scenarios are actually pretty similar, and have more to do with project readiness. It feels like the Tipper Committee is a good place to actually delve into more detail on what those, how different projects are progressing. But folks are definitely going to want to be heard at these meetings. So it could then just be repeating a lot of the same conversation, and people may need to feel that they need to be at twice as many meetings. And I think there are some global issues that specific, for example, Jen had talked about at a couple of different meetings, the kinds of standards that for design advancement and funding that the project needs to advance. And those are really helpful to have at the Tipper meeting, but scenarios might be also a lot more staff work too. So just adding fodder. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Anyone else? Any board members? And I'm going to check with David. Is anyone online? All right, David, is there anyone online?
Currently do not see raised hands.
All right. So I think we're done with the Tipper update. And I believe we have one more, which I believe is Chris on the UPWP. So Chris, you want to take it away?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The UPWP committee. I'm Chris Clem from MassDOT. The UPWP committee is meeting this afternoon at 2:30 p.m. in a hybrid format. We'll be discussing these discrete study ideas for the FY26 UPWP that have come about in response to the surveys you all completed in the last couple of months. For those joining in person, we'll be meeting on the second floor in the large conference room of room 2150. We also plan to meet next Thursday, April 10th, to have a conversation about FY 2026 more programmatic areas in the UPWP. Then meeting again the following Thursday on April 17th, where we will vote on a final list of discrete studies to be included in the 2026 UPWP. That is all I have. Thank you.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Chris? All right. Thank you, Chris. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is our first action item, agenda item 6, approval of the February 20th, 2025 minutes. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes, please? Eric?
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? John?
John Alessi, I'll second that motion and just want to indicate for MPO staff that I am here representing the town of Arlington because I wasn't included on the roll call.
All right. Sorry about that, John. All right. Any changes or comments on the minutes? Actually, do you want to go ahead, Sarah?
Hi, this is Sarah Lee, also checking in.
Absolutely.
All right, any changes or comments on the minutes of February 20th? All right, seeing none. Dave, do you want to read the roll?
Absolutely. To call the roll, Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Terassi,
Tyler Terassi, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Anna Switlikowski,
Anna Switlikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Erin Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Benton, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Yes.
Is there anyone on the roll that I have not called for this vote online? That motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, David. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 7. So work scope on the MBTA service equity analysis, and Sophie Fox is going to present it. Take it away, Sophie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Sophie Fox, and I am a data analyst with the MPO staff. Today, I'll be presenting the work scope for an intermediate year service equity analysis for the MBTA. This work has a budget of $40,000, with the funding coming from an MBTA contract and will last about 5 months after work commences. The MBTA complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protects people from discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. When the MBTA introduces a major service change, it is required to perform a service equity analysis to ensure that the service change does not introduce adverse effects. An adverse effect is defined as a disparate impact on populations protected on the basis of race or ethnicity, or a disproportionate burden on low-income populations. In December of 2024, the MBTA implemented the first set of changes under the bus network redesign. The effects of the entire collection of bus network redesign changes were deemed non-discriminatory in a previous service equity analysis, so a follow-up analysis for this phase of the redesign is not federally required under Title VI. The MBTA, however, is interested in an ongoing process to monitor intermediate equity impacts throughout their implementation period in order to understand the cumulative impacts of the smaller, non-major service changes and to ensure that it does not inadvertently introduce adverse effects. The service change will be measured in 2 ways. The change in the amount of service provided as measured by revenue vehicle hours, and the change in system coverage as measured by the percentage of the population that lives within a half mile of an MBTA stop or station. MPO staff will develop scenarios that represent the system before and after the service change and evaluate relevant demographic data to measure potential disparate impacts or disproportionate burdens. Our final results will then be delivered to the MBTA. We request your approval of this work program and are happy to take questions. And also Melissa DeLay from the MBTA, who is our collaborator on this, should be attending virtually. So if you have any questions for her as well. Thank you.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Sophie or Melissa? Let's go. All right, does someone want to make a motion, a second, to approve the scope? Eric?
I'm sorry.
Oh, Leonard did? Oh, sorry. Leonard, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be happy to make the motion to, and after I express my gratitude for the MBTA for going above and beyond by doing this kind of study. I mean, it just shows the commitment of the MBTA to providing equitable service, to the region. And I've come to expect no less, but nonetheless, I'm happy to see it. So thank you.
So, Jen, do you have a question? Do you want me? So Leonard made the motion, right, Leonard?
Well, I'll make the motion now. So I'll make the motion to accept this work scope.
All right, who wants to second it? Jen does. All right.
Jen Rowe, I'll second the motion and thank Len for saying what I was going to say. So also just an excellent example of evaluating a scope of work as it's being implemented. So it's something we're trying to do more and more in Boston, and really appreciate the T showing us how it's done.
All right. Anyone have any comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, Dave, you want to read the roll?
Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Tarazzi,
Tyler Tarasi, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Anna Switlikowski,
Switlikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Anyone who has not been called online? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sophie and Melissa. All right, so the next item on the agenda is agenda item 8, which is an action item. It's the federal fiscal year 2025 to 29 tip amendment 10. Ethan, take it away.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ethan Lapointe. I'm the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. My first presentation here this morning is Amendment 10 to the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 tip. So the current tip. If we can go on to the next slide and the one after that, I'll just provide an explanation or a reminder on what was in Amendment 10. So Amendment 10 to the tip reflects changes to 2 regional target projects that are currently programmed in federal fiscal year 2025. As part of the tip readiness days exercise this past February, those 2 projects were flagged as being likely to be delayed into federal fiscal, or I should say, flagged as likely to be unable to meet their scheduled advertising date within fiscal 25, thus being recommended for delay to federal fiscal year 2026 as a result of the readiness days exercise. Now, between these 2 projects, in addition to a project that is in Woburn that was delayed through Amendment 1 to the federal fiscal years 25 to 29 tip, those delays left a substantial unprogrammed balance of regional target funding in federal fiscal year 2025. Unlike traditional tip development processes where unprogrammed balances may be addressed within the development tip, because this was in fiscal 2025 and outside of the window of 2026 to 30, a tip amendment was required to program that unprogrammed balance. If we can go on to the next slide, I'll provide a refresher on what was then programmed in to reflect that balance. So Amendment 10 programmed funding for 5 new transit projects within federal fiscal year 2025 of the regional target program. It also provided additional funding for 4 already funded efforts on the MPO's tip, namely focusing on projects that had already been selected for funding as part of the development of the federal fiscal years 25 to 29 tip within the transit program. There were some scope changes on some of these projects because of the additional funding resources, namely the opportunity to procure new buses for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority and Cape Ann Transportation Authorities, with some other adjustments to capital improvement line items for the MWRTA's Blandon Hub and CADA's Gloucester facility as well. All in all, the 9 projects that were incorporated into the tip or had adjustments saw an addition of $24.1 million of new transit funding. About $2.8 million of that went to 3 projects for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority, $11.1 million of that went to 4 projects for the MBTA, and $10.2 million went to 2 Metro West Regional Transit Authority projects. And following these changes, I just want to note that within federal fiscal year 2025 of the current tip, the total allocation by the MPO to support transit projects will be at about $70.6 million, or 55% of all programmed funding in fiscal 25. If we can go on to the next slide, as an amendment, this did have a 21-day public comment period associated with it. If we can go on to the next slide there, that began on March 7th and conclude on March 28th at 5 p.m. During this period, MPO staff received 5 letters of support, 4 of which are listed on screen here. One from the MBTA Advisory Board expressing support for each of the projects included in the amendment, particularly with regard to the MBTA projects. The Town of Wellesley's Select Board provided a letter to support the Wellesley Square Station upgrades, an MBTA project, and the Town of Natick Select Board also provided one for the Natick Center Station Accessibility Project, an MBTA project. For the same project, there was also a letter submitted by State Representative David Linsky for the 5th Middlesex District, also for the Natick Center Station Accessibility Project. And on the next slide, the 5th letter was from the Metro West Regional Transit Authority in support of the Blandon Hub Accessible Redesign and some additional detail on this project and the timeline for architecture and engineering, or A&D work. MPO staff are also requesting specifically for the Blandon Hub Accessible Redesign project that Amendment 10 include a parallel change in the transit program of the TIP for the project description for the Blandon Hub project. So this amendment is currently reflecting a change on the project's description for the MPO side. We're also requesting that based on a change made by the Metro West Regional Transit Authority on the transit side of the TIP, that the description be updated there as well through this amendment rather than through a separate action. On the next slide, staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 10, inclusive of that project description change.
All right, anyone have any questions for Ethan? All right, someone want to make a motion second to endorse Amendment 10 as detailed here by Ethan? Eric?
I will make a motion to endorse Amendment 10.
Hannah Swilikowski, I'll second that.
All right, last call for any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, Dave, you want to read the roll?
Yes. Steve Wolfle,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Terassi,
Tyler Terassi, yes. Did you?
thank you. Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brasa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Naomi Rodriguez,
Naomi Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Christy Urio,
Mysterio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Steve Olenoff.
Steve Wallenoff, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ethan. Next agenda item is MBTA Capital Investment Plan presentation by Mike. So Mike, take it away.
See that goes. All right, thank you all very much. My name is Mike Malia. I'm with the MBTA. I'm here to present the FY 26 to 30 proposed CIP. Next slide, please. Yes, and next slide. All right. In accordance with Governor Healy, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, Secretary Tibbetts-Nutt, and General Manager Eng, the proposed FY 26 to 30 CIP delivers meaningful results for the needs of today as we lay the groundwork for tomorrow. Our CIP is driven by 3 key objectives: timely maintenance now, building upon recent progress through the TIP and other programs; building for the future, ensuring that today's investments set a strong foundation for future infrastructure while seeking additional funding; and improving service for riders, ensuring improved service in the near and long term, improving frequency, reliability, decarbonization, and rider enhancements as outlined in full T ahead. Next slide, please. Our capital program strategy goes beyond just the CIP, and we continue to develop our strategic approach to advance our vision, focusing on strategic process improvements. We are improving our asset information, improving asset data, and developing asset class plans to better inform priorities and address state of good repair needs. We are right-sizing our workforce and streamlining right-of-way access to increase workforce capacity and access capabilities, allowing us to reduce costs and disruptions while improving rider service. We are aggressively pursuing funding opportunities, especially in the realm of grants for key capital projects and programs. We are also seeking out opportunities to enhance capital projects with development opportunities in the region, including in areas like Alewife, Everett, and Lynn. We are advancing our organizational delivery and focusing on internal coordination with operations teams to ensure a comprehensive approach to capital investments, enhancing maintenance, performing both regular one-time and programmatic maintenance to build on the progress made during the track improvement program, and building for the future, incorporating long-range planning to continue our overall assets. Next slide, please. And we are already making progress. We are delivering meaningful results within the asset planning is now informing projects. Our asset class planning efforts have supported the development of capital project scopes to address most critical needs and have been wrapped into recent master planning efforts. Our workforce, we are delivering meaningful results of our workforce and right-of-way access as we have refined our internal processes to access right-of-way, ensuring more effective coordination for a right-sized workforce and better results for riders. Within their discretionary grants, our strategic and aggressive approach for discretionary grants has yielded over $830 million since the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law. In the realm of on-time and on-budget delivery, this is where we're also seeing substantial progress. In terms of organizational delivery efficiency, we have increased our collaboration with operations teams, and through things like insourcing and enhanced coordination and planning, we are ensuring a more efficient project delivery and minimizing rider impacts. Programmed capital maintenance. The track improvement program was completed in 2024, and we are continuing to build on that with additional maintenance and inspection work for track, stations, and structures throughout calendar year 2025. A shift from being more reactive to something that's more proactive and programmed is a definite focus for the agency right now. And we've also undergone a review of in-flight capital projects to ensure for existing projects within the CIP, assessing continued progress towards long-term goals and needs, and ensuring alignment with current operational goals. Next slide, please. Just to spotlight some recent stuff that we have done on this front, the track improvement program should be known to basically everyone. The TIP removed over 220 speed restrictions, replaced 250,000 feet of rail, and improved track reliability across the system, allowing the red line to reach speeds that it had not seen before, and we're planning future increases on the orange line as well. That's the realm of the large. Even on the small, we've made some major improvements here that we think are meaningful and impactful. The real-time information for riders. The release of the MBTA Go app allows riders to access real-time information on all fixed route services in a more accessible way, which we are very proud of. We have also launched bus network redesign, and phase one has features enhanced multiple key bus routes, leading to a 60% increase in service frequency with additional improvements to come. Next slide. Now, turning to the meat of the CIP, the FY26-30 CIP includes over 660 projects for a program spend of $9.8 billion over the next 5 fiscal years, including approximately $1 billion in new funding as a result of this cycle. Looking at the screen here, you can see on the left our breakdown of our program spend by mode, and then also by CIP program on the right. So as we can see here right now for this plan, rapid transit has about $3.8 billion in program spend for this CIP, followed by commuter rail at over $2.5 billion, system-wide improvements, including multimodal, or actually just system-wide improvements for over $2 billion, and nearly $1.1 billion for bus. And we can see in terms of the programs, vehicles definitely leads the way here as we were replacing a number of our fleets, followed by guideway signals and power, passenger facilities, structures, and maintenance and admin facilities. Next slide, please. Now, for some framing here, the next series of slides will highlight some investments that we're doing by mode. Along the top ribbon, you'll see helpful information, including miles of service, revenue vehicle counts, and our weekday ridership. We'll be going through here and just highlighting some programmatic investments and highlights for particular projects as we go through by mode. And also along the bottom of the screen, you'll see notes there and asterisks identifying the new funding that's added through this CIP. Now turning specifically to rapid transit, this capital plan includes substantial investment for Green Line infrastructure, vehicles, and accessibility with over $1.7 billion in Green Line infrastructure and accessibility upgrades to introduce the new Type 10 trains by 2027. We are also making substantial investment within rapid transit power system upgrades with over $404 million to upgrade power systems on our rapid transit lines to increase efficiency, reduce maintenance, and improve overall reliability, including $126 million in new funding. And for project highlights here, we've brought both the Red and Orange Line Vehicles Program and the Red and Orange Line Signals projects. Together, this represents $777 million in funding to deliver new vehicles and modernized signal equipment on the Red and Orange lines, improving safety, reliability, and efficiency, including nearly $50 million in new funding as a result of this cycle. Next slide, please. Within the bus network, we are seeing continued investment with bus modernization and electrification with nearly $500 million to construct new and retrofitted bus facilities, prepare for a larger, more efficient fleet of battery electric buses with more frequent service. We are also continuing investment for bus network redesign and transit priority with $180 million to continue the implementation of our bus network redesign and to improve transit priority infrastructure, including transit signal priority and technology, including $33 million in new funding. And as a project highlight here, we have our hybrid bus overhauls project with over $47 million for critical midlife overhauls of 45 60-foot hybrid buses, improving the state of our fleet and ensuring safe and reliable service. And nearly all of that is new funding within this CIP. Next slide. Within the commuter rail network, we have targeted investments for commuter rail vehicles with $710 million in investments in our rail fleet, replacing our oldest locomotives and continuing to add more bi-level coaches to the system. This includes over $189 million in new funding. We are continuing to invest in regional rail modernization with $223 million for further investments for rail modernization, such as the Fairmont line upgrades to support 20-minute decarbonized service by 2028. And as a major project highlight here, the largest program on our plan, the North Station Draw 1 bridge replacement. There is nearly $680 million within the FY 26 to 30 window as part of an overall $1.2 billion project to replace and expand the North Station Draw 1 bridge, which will increase network capacity and reliability. This includes the largest grant that the MBTA has ever received, a $472 million mega grant fund, which we are very proud of. Next slide. And rounding out our modes here, we have for ferry, system-wide ferry improvements features over $50 million for ferry terminal accessibility upgrades and fleet overhauls, supporting more consistent network of water transportation services. And for paratransit, we are continuing investment in the ride vehicle fleet replacement. We are striving for more seamless transitions between paratransit and fixed route services. Next slide. In the system-wide and multimodal realm, we have substantial investment for structural inspection and repairs with $488 million investments for structural inspection and repairs to support a more proactive approach to maintenance, including $35 million in new funding. For track and facility state of good repair programs, we have $265 million for state of good repair programs within track and facilities assets, such as stairs, escalators, elevators, emergency fire systems, roofs, and station inspections. This is building upon the recent progress of the track improvement program in calendar year 2024 and the ongoing work for the comprehensive upgrades to the Red Line, Orange Line signal system. And as a project highlight that is more rider-facing, we have the countdown clock and PA system upgrades with $33 million to upgrade rider-facing audio and visual equipment, communications equipment in our stations, including countdown clocks and public address systems. This includes $23 million in new funding. Next slide. Now just looking at some broader highlights within our CIP by investment program, and this is highlighting new funding for CIP programs. Within vehicles, we have substantial investment to overhaul auxiliary power systems on the Blue Line vehicles, and we are upgrading maintenance of way vehicle fleet. Within the passenger facilities realm, we are continuing to invest in accessible mini-high programs at commuter rail stations with $15 million in new funding, along with a new program for bus shelter installations and improvements. In business and operational support, we have $2 million to implement our safety management system, or SMS, and continue to invest in rail modernization planning. Within structures, we have additional investment for our system-wide tunnel inspection program and $6 million to improve bridge safety walkways system-wide. Within guideway signals and power, we are a substantial investment for improved maintenance access on the Orange Line and funding for early actions to electrify the Newburyport-Rockport line. In terms of maintenance and administrative facilities, we are funding a new operations control center, along with improvements, $9.2 million in improvements to commuter rail facilities. And within technology innovation, we have $3.2 million for a heavy rail dispatch software system improvements and nearly $21 million for system-wide radio system upgrades. Next slide, please. As we are going through and addressing our challenges, we are making progress on state of good repair needs. The 2023 Capital Needs Assessment, or CNAI, identified a $24.5 billion backlog in baseline capital needs to bring our system into a state of good repair. Over the past year, we have seen substantial investment to chip away at this, especially in the realm of track and signals. And with over $9.5 billion programmed in the CIP to reliability and modernization efforts, we are continuing to prioritize state of good repair for timely maintenance, building for the future, and improving service for our riders. A part of that $9.5 billion that we are particularly proud of is renewed investment with our power systems programs, including $80 million in state investment through the Capital Transformation Fund, which we are greatly appreciative to the administration. We are also improving project delivery. In May 2024, the MBTA identified a workforce shortfall of over 1,000 staff needed for safe and reliable service. And thankfully, through the support of the Healy Driscoll administration, we have been able to staff up, and it has been key to our ability to insource a lot of the work that we are trying to do now, really ramping up our preventative maintenance program and program maintenance programs. This is both allowing for more effective diversions, more effective projects, but also finding cost savings through those, especially in the realm of diversions, while building our own internal capacity, which will be key to our ability to stay out of the areas we were 2 years ago and be more forward-looking. And we have uncertain federal funding, but we are proud of the strong state report that we have. Something that needs to be stated here, federal funding remains uncertain as the bipartisan infrastructure law expires at the end of fiscal year 2026. However, the Commonwealth's commitment for recurring funding, the Commonwealth Transportation Fund, has been very welcome and has unlocked borrowing capacity to support $1.25 billion worth of projects at the MBTA and MassDOT over the next 5 years. And we are very much monitoring the progress of this current budget cycle, as there's definitely the prospect for more. Next slide, please. Now, as we look at the things that we didn't fund, given funding constraints, the MBTA was only able to allocate $1.031 billion of funding to new projects as a part of this FY26 to 30 CIP cycle. This represents only 8% of the total funds requested. When we started this cycle back in September, we had 254 project submissions representing $13.5 billion. After going through a departmental vetting process to refocus the capital needs, that slimmed down to just over $7.6 billion and 192 projects. But going through everything we see here, we're able to fund or provide new funding for only 108 projects, again, just over $1 billion, and that's only able to meet about 13% of what is the identified FY26 to 30 funding need after that departmental vetting process. Next slide. Now, acknowledging our constraints, we are still very much focused on delivering meaningful results. Many critical projects could not be fully funded this cycle, but we are advancing work with the resources we have today to ensure that we are ready for the future. Some areas where we have some significant unfunded needs to highlight here would be the Arborware Bus Maintenance Facility, a project that requires over $440 million to get through to construction. We are bringing this project to 30% design so that we can proceed with full design and construction once funding is identified, and it would be a top priority if new funds were made available through the state budgeting process. Whiteout Layover and Maintenance Facility. The CIP funds initial work on the property for demolition and design work, but we still have substantial needs to be able to make this fully operational. For extension of the Silver Line, a CIP supporting design and environmental permitting work. And for rail modernization, especially for the electrification of the Newburyport-Rockport line, we have $10 million within this CIP to fund the construction of a traction power substation that would be critical for electrifying this corridor, but substantial needs remain for us to be able to bring this to, into reality. Next slide. So we are now within our public engagement period. The CIP was presented to the public on March 27th when we presented it to the MBTA board. We are going through right now. We have a number of public meetings, one of them this evening, another one following next Thursday that will be in person. But we are very much encouraging public comment and trying to make sure we hear from everyone on this. People can get us comments through meetings like this, through our public comment meetings. We have an online comment tool at mbta.com/CIP. You can also send us emails or even mail a letter to the general manager. Those will get to us. We will go through.
You're muted.
Cataloging and digesting the public comments. In May, on May 15th, we'll be going to MBTA's Finance and Audit Subcommittee to present our final CIP. And then on the 20th, we'll be presenting the final CIP and releasing the final CIP to the MBTA's board upon their approval. As I did mention, we will be providing responses, high-level responses for public comments. Those information will generally be published in June as we've had a chance to fully digest that. We don't want to necessarily hold up the publication of the CIP. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Questions? Jake?
Thank you. This is fantastic. And every year I'm more and more impressed with the level of detail that you all, the team, bring when bringing the CIP to us. Thanks to the advocacy of a lot of the folks on this board over the years as well. So really great. Two things. One, even though I know you couldn't fund the electrification of the Newburyport Rockport line or the Silver line in this cycle, I'm at least happy to see that it's on your priority list, that you're recognizing that and making some early contributions to that. So thank you, both for us and Everett. We're going to rely on that, but also for our partners on the North Shore. Second part was just a matter of curiosity. You know, there's a lot of early action items that you all are doing, good things for commuter rail transformation. And I wonder, are there things on the highway side, things that we also touch? You know, bridges comes to mind, right? If there's a bridge project on here that should consider, you know, making room for catenary or power systems or other things like that, is there a process that you all engage in or that we should be aware of to ensure that those projects can mesh together?
In terms of how the for highways, bridges and highways and that, I'll have to get back to you. I don't think there is a process that I'm aware of, but I'll have to double check.
Great. Yeah, so make sure that our investments are complementing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I fully understood.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple quick questions. One is, how many vehicles are you planning to purchase for the commuter lines, and what type of vehicles are they?
So we have recently executed an option, a final option for bi-level coaches, and it's 39 additional vehicles on top of, I think, a 41 vehicle option that we already executed. We are also looking to procure some new locomotives as our locomotive fleet is very much nearing the end of life. We're investigating a number of options here, whether it is the purchase or procurement of at least 5 new diesel locomotives, but we're also very much looking at options for electrification if we can on certain lines, and leasing vehicles there, so we're not fully committing to having diesel for the next 20 to 40 years. But it is an area that we are very much focused on. We're developing some further plans on that, but we include about $152 million in new funding for locomotives right now.
Great. And just one other question, if I could you send me a list of the projects on the Worcester line that were included in the CIP and the ones that were not included?
Certainly, we'll get back to you with that.
Great, thanks.
Others? Derek? Mike, thank you. Great presentation. I just have a couple questions. One, on slide 36, you guys break down, you know, what the 9.8 billion of the CIP, how it's going to different programs. I know you guys have done a lot of work also to highlight, you know, what's not funded in terms of like dollar amount. Would it be possible to break that like request that's not funded
Certainly.
into those same programs?
Yes, we have all those done by the, It'll be more about a total funding amount because the 13.5, what we initially got, that was a total funding request, including some funds outside the window. So it's not going to be fully analogous to the 5-year part, but yes, we can definitely provide that.
That would be great if that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my second question is the governor's proposal in the supplemental budget with the fair share funds. Are those assumptions baked into this CIP or are they not included?
They are not until those funds become real. We are not programming in the CIP. So there's obviously a lot of movement here, and we see the opportunities and potential for some substantial mid-year investment, and we're making those decisions at that time, in coordination with the governor's staff and with ANF. We understand this is going to be targeted largely for facilities, and we have some prime facilities lined up that would be very good candidates for that, but we'll see what makes it through the legislature.
And if it did pass, it would be 1.25 billion divided by 5 or 10?
So the 1.25 billion, actually, we have already included the MBTA's portion of that, 601 million. That was funding that was approved as part of last year's CIP cycle.
Okay.
There is the potential for a further increase and expansion in CTF-enabled borrowing. And I believe that there's been a discussion of up to 850 million that could potentially be going to the MBTA. I'm not aware of the portion that would be going to DOT, but I know it's a very large program they're talking about. Those funds are not have not been programmed in the CIP, but they will be addressed sometime over the summer if they materialize.
But would that be over the life of the CIP, that dollar amount, or is that over 10 years? It's fine.
Yeah, no, I know the overall $8 billion that the governor has proposed is over a 10-year period as a mix of operating and capital. We would be targeting investments that would likely extend outside the window, but it'd be for large projects that we could not fund through this cycle.
Thank you. The reason I ask these questions is I just think it's important that this new funding is fabulous. And we, MAPC, big supporters of it. But I think we also need to recognize that within the overall kind of need of the MBTA's, maintenance, state of good repair, it's still, relatively small. Like we still have, there's a lot of need out there. And I think we all need to continue to just talk about what those numbers are. And I think to the extent that they can just be shown in these documents, I think is really helpful. So thank you.
We very much appreciate the opportunities for these one-time funds. Finding more reliable and recurring sources is obviously going to be key for meeting our state of good repair needs going forward.
Steve Olenoff.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify all those numbers. So this is a 5-year plan. So that means all those numbers in all those categories, we divide by 5 to see the average amount spent each year?
That is an analysis here. I will say our plan is front-loaded, but also because the new revenues that we have coming in are very much decreasing. We're only adding about $1 billion a year, and you see it's a $9.8 billion program right now, which would be averaging about 2. So we are more front-loaded right now, and even this fiscal year, we are on pace to hit a new record in overall spending at over $2 billion. So it is more front-loaded, finding ways to fund major projects that have major out-year implications is a challenge as we try and navigate the sources that we're able to incorporate.
So where would we find the amount spent each year? Is that in the plan?
We are right now only publishing the 5-year window itself, as there are certain aspects of the plan are still uncertain in terms of the timing, as we're still working through right-of-way access, which has been a major constraint over the last few years. So we do not plan on publishing a 5-year breakdown, individual breakdown, especially since we're going to be navigating some very interesting times, even just over the coming months, and even with the news yesterday in terms of tariffs. All of this is subject to change.
And when you said new funding, so that's new funding of what period over what previous period?
That is incorporating funding for FY30. It's a combination largely of MBTA bonds, also then the about $443 million of an assumption in a continued federal formula funding. But that again is also very uncertain with BIL expiring at the end of federal fiscal year 26.
So again, that's a 5-year numbers.
Yeah, we're just adding another year's worth of funding into the picture.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciated seeing kind of the identified need with what's in the plan and also some of the thinking that you're doing to become kind of more efficient. My question was around the right of way. You talked about a refined internal process to access the right of way. And in particular on advancing capital programs and maintenance efficiency. And this is something that we deal with at the MPO often just in terms of looking at projects that have some type of interaction with the MBTA, whether it's over the tracks or proximity to the right of way or easement. And just wondering if that improving that process for access of the right of way will translate as well to city and town projects.
That's a very good question. I would assume that there will be some improvements regardless, simply because we are now looking much further out. We're already programming our calendar year 2026 diversion calendar, which is much more foresighted than we have been in the past. And that's what's really allowing us to ensure that we are maximizing the impact we can make while minimizing the disruption to riders and also ensuring that we can piggyback work to take more advantage of a diversion or an outage as it happens.
Thank you.
Ben.
First of all, I want to thank you for the presentations. Well done. I also want to just piggyback on to Erin's question about coordination with, the cities and towns that the T is working with. I think sometimes we find that can be a challenge. So hopefully, with what's on your docket going forward, that there will be more coordination, not only between cities and towns, but also MassDOT, so that, we're getting the answers when we need them and we're making sure that the needs that we may see are being incorporated into the plans.
I would just be remiss to not emphasize that the right-of-way access, and especially the planning and improvements we're doing here, are very much focused on the rapid transit network, as that's where we have the greatest level of complications in terms of trying to implement actual work and just scheduling work as part of multi-year contracts and multi-year projects. There is very much still a greater need for coordination overall for any projects within the MBTA or without that would be impacting the right-of-way to ensure that we are appropriately involved with the designs, that we can make sure to deconflict wherever possible.
And just had one other question. It looks like you have, quite a bit of work that you're going to be doing over the next few years. And I think you touched on this a little bit, but do you feel like you have the capacity internally, with construction managers, project managers, things like that, to be able to get this done? I know a lot out in the construction industry, it's difficult to get reliable and good people, over the last few years. So I was just wondering how your capacity is and how you feel about that.
I would say probably one of our biggest constraints is not necessarily internal capacity on the capital contract or like project manager side, but it's in getting enough firms and enough competition within our bids and getting a larger bidding pool. That's probably the biggest challenge we have, both in terms of capacity and affordability. And we're doing what we can to try and expand that by doing much more, looking much more strongly at CM at risk and design build procurements rather than simply going through Chapter 30 design bid build. We've seen some improvements with that already, and we are definitely jumping in with with both feet on that to try and broaden our contractor community.
I'm glad you said that, because the sometimes I think it could be also the complexity of just trying to bid a project for the T. So I didn't know if you're looking at, how you're doing that so that you invite more competition to that bidding process.
We are taking a much stronger look at alternative procurements in a way that we have not been before. It'll be a journey for us, but it is one that we are excited for, and we've already seen progress with certain projects. We very much need to broaden the GC and CM community that would be willing to bid on our projects.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Now we're at the break. It says it's 10 minutes, but it's going to be 12 because it's 11:28 by my watch, so 11:40. All right, I think we'll start. It is the tip, Ethan LaPointe.
Okay, without further ado. Okay, this next item is the final project programming scenario for the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 tip. I'm Ethan Lapointe. I presented earlier on TIP Amendment 10. For the next slide and the slide after that, I'm going to give an overview on what this presentation is going to contain, namely stating today's objective, which is fairly straightforward. I'll go through some of the materials for this meeting. I'll provide an overview on the scenarios, which may not be as straightforward, and also provide an overview as well on the discussion that took place last week on March 27th for the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee and their resulting recommendation for consideration here today, along with some changes that have emerged over the past week. This then takes us into scenario batch 2, as we're referring to it, an iteration upon what was voted out at the March 20th MPO meeting, and then of course have a discussion before staff will look to request a vote on a final programming scenario. So on the next slide, the objective today is on paper fairly simple. MPO staff are going to be requesting at the end of this presentation that the board votes to adopt a final programming scenario for the 2630 TIP to ensure that the draft TIP can be released on April 17th. A scenario must be in place today, functionally, to accomplish that. Now, to facilitate this meeting on the next slide, we do have revised scenarios available for MPO members to review on the meeting calendar, along with some printouts that are available. These are compiled in one file, scenario 2A, B, and C. These are 3 scenarios that are consistent with what the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee saw last week. With that said, resulting from discussion, which I'll get into later in this presentation, that happened at the TIP committee meeting, staff have also been provided with additional information, had received a request to develop a 4th scenario, scenario 2D, that is more of an iteration of 2A. I will explain that once we actually get into the scenarios, but just note that if you see a 4th scenario, that is why. There are also simplified versions of each of these scenarios that are available as a separate file. Simplified scenarios are very similar. They just consolidate lower risk line items for easier reading and review of how each of the different scenarios are distinct from one another. We can go on the next slide, and of course, we also have project descriptions on the MPO calendar for each of the projects currently programmed on the TIP or seeking funding through the TIP right now. And before we proceed, I also would like to note that in addition to the TIP project descriptions, we also have a packet on the MPO calendar right now indicating all public comments that staff have received with regard to any of the projects currently programmed on the TIP or seeking funding through the federal fiscal years 2026 to 30 TIP. This packet does not include 2 letters that staff received last night, one from the city of Newton recommending or requesting consideration of scenario 2A, or indicating preference, I should say, based on the letter, and one from the city of Malden with regard to funding for the Route 60 design project and also support for the Spot Pond Brook Greenway project there. That is a currently programmed project for the TIP, I should note. If we can go on to the next slide, I just want to provide an overview of some changes that have emerged from what was presented at the March 20th board meeting that were previewed last week at the TIP Process Engagement Readiness Committee meeting. Starting off with changes that are already incorporated into each of the scenarios here today. On the next slide, there are 2 cost increases. One of these was presented on March 20th, but was presented at a time that was not immediately ready to be considered for factoring into scenario batch 1. So when the MPO board voted out scenario 1A for consideration, the cost increase on the Belmont Community Path had not yet been factored into the remaining funding balance for federal fiscal year 2026. This project, based on the 75% submission, it's just a submission at this point, still requires approval based on additional changes to the design, has a revised budget, as was initially shown, at $27.3 million, a 33.2% increase. In addition, the scenarios also now reflect improvements on Boylston Street in Boston. This was also previewed at a previous MPO meeting from the intersection of Brookline Avenue and Park Drive to Ipswich Street. This was an internal estimate that the city of Boston worked with their consultant to develop. So while there is not a new design submission currently that this cost estimate is associated with, it is an updated cost estimate independent of a design submission, increasing about 17.5% in cost and reflecting the newly proposed scope of work for the project, which omits the intersection at Park Drive, given that that is an asset under DCR jurisdiction. If we can go on the next slide, there is one item that was not captured during the March 20th MPO meeting discussion. This is a third cost increase for a project in federal fiscal year 2026, which is the intersection reconstruction at Route 3 in Bedford Road, which saw a 75% design submission on March 19th, 2025, which prompted a new cost estimate that is a 42% increase over the previous estimate. Now, it's worth noting staff do not have a large amount of information as to what is the main driver for this cost estimate increase. It's also worth noting that in development of the federal fiscal years 25-29 TIP last year, that the project had already seen a 73% cost increase as a result of that 25% design submission. So just noting that here, as the design submission was only 1 year old prior to this cost increase being realized. And I'll also just reiterate that this project was one of the projects that was delayed out of federal fiscal year 2025 into 2026 due to considerations around Article 97 and permitting complications for the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. On the next slide, there is a change here, which I will get into. When staff had originally presented this to the TIP committee and also the MPO board, the city of Cambridge had initially made a request to support $2 million to substitute an earmark expiring at the end of federal fiscal year 2025 to construct separated bicycle lanes on Cambridge Street. Now, on the next slide, based on discussions that the city has had with MassDOT, and this was something that was mentioned during the public comment stage of this meeting, the city of Cambridge is now pivoting to indicate that their preferred priority for the allocation of $2 million here, this is $2 million already accounted for in each of these scenarios, is to substitute the $2 million off of the Cambridge Street bicycle lanes and instead towards the design of a shared use path connection over the MBTA Fitchburg line at Dannehy Park. This is to backstop a Reconnecting Communities grant award, which is still subject to additional federal review, that is only partially obligated by the city of Cambridge. Now, it is worth noting this is a request for design funding here. Part of why this request is proposed for consideration as part of scenarios is because there is already a contract in place for this project. It does not require additional work to establish a new contract at this time, which is something that is more of the case for other new design project applications. I mentioned this to distinguish this project from the projects that were selected as part of the project design pilot in previous scenarios, just in case that question may come up. Worth noting here again, this is $2 million in addition to what has already been obligated so far on the Reconnecting Communities grant, just to ensure that should the grant be pulled back for whatever reason as part of the review process, that there's still funding available to advance this project towards a later design stage. I'll also note as well, this is a project that had applied for construction funding through the TIP this year, and it was one of the I think it may have actually been the highest scoring project of evaluation for construction. So also just mentioning that here based on the project's proposed scope. On the next slide, we also have one other new project. I apologize here. We actually have one other project change. I was a little bit out of order on my notes. This is something I want to mention because it was verbally noted during discussion at the March 20th MPO meeting. There's been further discussion that has happened between the town of Hingham and MassDOT previously, prior to the TIP committee meeting that took place on March 27th. This is with regard to the improvement project on Route 3A from Otis Street and Cole Road, including Summer Street and the Rotary in the town of Hingham. Based on continuing coordination from MassDOT and the town, a federal fiscal year 2027 delay for the project is likely as a result of some ongoing coordination issues around utility and drainage work. Now, based on each of the scenarios presented here today, delaying the project to federal fiscal year 2027 would require an additional $22 million to be identified in fiscal 2027. And again, this is a delay that is not reflected in any of the scenarios included here today, and thus additional funding resources would need to be found to accommodate this delay. Also worth noting, there's $10 million currently in federal fiscal year 2027. If the project were to be moved beyond 2027, a further $10 million would need to be found in a later year. Also noting that here right now. On the next slide, we then get to the new project I mentioned. The MBTA has submitted an additional request for consideration for federal fiscal year 2026, which is an operating improvement for bus routes 714 and 716. The 714 bus serves the town of Hingham and town of Hull, with the proposed improvements here delivering 30-minute headways, while the 716 bus serves Boston, Milton, and Canton, with improvements not only delivering 45-minute headways, but also hourly Sunday service and a pilot program with a summer diversion from Houghton's Pond. The project, or I should say, the 716 bus currently provides service to the Royal Street Office Park, which is across the street from the access road for Houghton's Pond. This is a request for 1.875 million in 2026 to deliver these improvements. This is a unique form of request in the sense that the 714 and 716 buses are contract fixed route services, which means that this is an opportunity to allow MPO funding to be utilized to improve service frequencies and operations in a way that other MBTA operated bus routes may not be able to do so. In addition to the service improvements, it's also worth noting that these routes will also feature new connections for Route 128 commuter rail station, Canton Center commuter rail station, and also Nantasket Junction for the 714 bus. On the next slide, this project, in addition to two others, a $3.2 million request from the MBTA for the Better Bus Project, operational safety improvements at bus stops, which will improve operations and safety for users of bus stops across the MBTA system, along with a similar but accessibility-focused upgrade as part of the MBTA's plan for accessible transit infrastructure, which has a $6 million budget, are proposed in addition to that operating enhancement project. These are three projects amounting to $11.1 approximately million in federal fiscal year 2026 for inclusion in there. Also worth noting, this is following how each of the scenarios already accounts for the Linfield Rail Trail Extension Phase 1, which was presented as part of Scenario 1A. There are also other projects in federal fiscal year 2026 that were also already addressed in 1A, including the aforementioned project design requests for the City of Malden, Town of Acton, Town of Hudson, and also City of Salem. And then also the Community Connections Grant Awards for Blue Bikes projects and bicycle rack procurement and rectangular rapid flashing beacon RFB contracts within the City of Newton. Had to get that acronym.
You're muted.
'27 possibility of a delay on the Route 3A project in Hingham, and thus far the cost increase on the Woburn intersection at Route 3 and Cambridge Road project. Though it is worth noting that that cost increase on the Woburn Route 3 and Cambridge Road project is within fiscal constraint to be accounted for in federal fiscal year 26 of each of these scenarios. So scenario 2A, 2B, and 2C all built off of the scenario that was approved by the MPO board at the March 20th MPO meeting, and each of them also features the same new transit projects in federal fiscal year 2026, leading to an identical reserve of funding for each of the scenarios in federal fiscal year 2026. It is worth noting as well that none of the scenarios currently account for the Fitchburg Crossing funding request. Each of them are still assuming a $2 million allocation to the Cambridge Street Bike Lanes project. So moving on to what was discussed last week at the TIP committee meeting. If we can go on to the next slide, please, and the one following that. So on March 27th, the committee met to discuss these revised programming scenarios for 2A, B, and C. And as I just mentioned, each of these built on 1A based on this MPO's vote to advance that scenario for consideration. Now, the scenario, or I should say, the committee had voted to recommend scenario 2A as a preference to the MPO board based on a vote that had about 7 in favor, 2 against, 1 absent, and then also 1 abstention. I note that because based on discussion that emerged as part of the vote to recommend a scenario, staff then had heard that other committee members, in addition to MPO staff, began coordinating based on some commentary that happened around projects within the city of Lynn, namely with regard to the Western Avenue project that was proposed for a delay to federal fiscal year 2030 in each of the 3 scenarios that were under consideration by the TIP committee. As a result, I want to note that on the next slide, that the discussion had generally indicated that there were no scenarios of those 3 that resolved all of the risks that were present in the TIP, and some members had also expressed concern that because the project for the, or I should say the proposal for the delay of Western Avenue was present in each scenario, that not all of those scenarios, or that the scenarios were too alike in their readiness changes. Now, I will note that delay for Western Avenue to federal fiscal year 2030 was the primary driver for scenario 1A, which was the scenario that was voted on March 20th. However, based on that discussion following last week's meeting that I just mentioned earlier, that discussion then led MPO staff to try to facilitate an identification of a path towards a compromise scenario of 2D. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to take a step back and talk about scenario 1A a little bit, just to provide another refresher. I mentioned that the primary driver on scenario 1A was that Western Avenue delay. Scenario 1A had sought to resolve an anticipated deficit in federal fiscal year 2027 by delaying the Essex Street project in Lynn to federal fiscal year 2028. Rather than trying to identify funding in federal fiscal year 2029, as the Essex Street project was also going to push some funding into 29, by delaying a project in a different municipality, scenario 1A had proposed delaying Western Avenue to federal fiscal year 2030, given it was within the same municipality as the Essex Street project. It is worth noting that the March 20th MPO meeting, there was a scenario very similar to 1A in the form of scenario 1D, and that it conducted the same delay of the Essex Street project to federal fiscal year, I think it actually should say 29 for Essex Street on both columns, but also rather than delay Western Avenue entirely to account for the Essex Street delay, it incorporated some delay of the Rutherford Avenue project to federal fiscal year 2030 in the city of Boston. Now, scenario 1D left a substantial unprogrammed balance in fiscal 2029, and at the time, staff had noted that there would be a potential opportunity to use that unprogrammed balance to not only keep Western Avenue in fiscal 29, but also Rutherford Avenue. On the next slide, just as a reminder for what was voted out for 1A, 1A also left a substantial unprogrammed balance in federal fiscal year 2026 to be addressed by various cost increases or other new projects to be considered to the tune of about $26.4 million. And then in 2030, there was about $45.8 million for consideration for new uses. Now, 2A on the next slide, and shortly after this, I'll actually explain what 2D is because it's very similar to 2A. But 2A funds 4 new projects in federal fiscal year 2030 and also partially funds the Park and Pearl Street project in the city of Chelsea in federal fiscal year 2030. This was not discussed on March 20th, but did come up as a topic of discussion during TIP readiness days, wherein as a result of TIP readiness days, multiple projects within the city of Chelsea were being proposed for delay or had emerged within the program within federal fiscal year 2027. And due to traffic control considerations, the city of Chelsea had initially proposed moving the Park and Pearl Street project either to federal fiscal year 2030 or off of the TIP to federal fiscal year 2031. Given the uncertainty around funding availability in federal fiscal year 2031, scenario 2A incorporates that partial obligation or partial allocation of funding for Park and Pearl Street to sort of provide it with a position on the current TIP such that it would not necessarily need to compete next year, given the uncertain funding situation that may emerge this time next year for TIP development, given we don't know what fiscal constraint looks like. Now, the focus of scenario 2A, which was the one voted by the committee, was on funding newer, smaller projects in most cases with recent cost estimates and nearer term 25% design submissions, specifically design submissions that would be provided to MassDOT either before the start of federal fiscal year 2026 or before next year's TIP readiness days exercise. The idea here being to mitigate longer term funding risks. Now, this is mitigation of longer term funding risks. This still does allocate some risk to federal fiscal year 2031, and the projects that are proposed for scenario 2A are not without their risk. Granted, there are no projects that may lack any risk for consideration in it, or any new project that lacks risk for consideration TIP scenarios, nor within currently programmed projects as well. I'd also note that in addition to the lower risk recommendation as a primary objective here, scenario 2A had a secondary objective on regional funding distribution, namely with regard to funding projects within the Minuteman Advisory Group subregion. It's worth noting that over the past few years of the TIP, projects within the MAGIC subregion had not been fully or allocated proportional to the population of the MAGIC subregion, leading to a less than 1% allocation of regional target funding to that region. This proposal here with scenario 2A would grow that allocation to about 3% compared to the 5% population of the subregion, though ongoing funding to the Lexington Route 4225, or I should say, ongoing funding to the Hartwell Avenue and Bedford Street project would likely bring that to 5% over subsequent tips. Specifically, and I know I just mentioned the Hartwell project, but on these next few slides, I'll mention the 4 projects in scenario 2A. On the next slide, we do have one project that already has a 25% submission dating from January 10th with a revised cost estimate accordingly. This is the Lebanon Street Improvement Project from Lynn Street to the Malden City line, which would construct separated bicycle lanes and cycle tracks along Lebanon Street in Melrose. On the next slide, we then have a project request from the city of Newton that also expands into Needham, which is a bridge replacement on Christina Street. This is a bridge that is currently an unutilized railroad bridge. So it does say replacement, but it is a new pedestrian crossing. The 25% submission for this project, which has a budget of $5.55 million, is expected fall 2025, and that is a revised cost estimate. On the next slide, we also have a similar river crossing for shared use travel. This project is the Aspet River Multi-Use Trail and Bridge Construction Project, which is partially programmed in federal fiscal year 2030 at approximately $5 million against an adjusted recent cost estimate from the consultant from about last week at about $15.5 million. Now, this is a project that was supposed to have a 25% design submission when the project applied back this past fall in March of 2025. However, due to elevated levels of precipitation, the geotechnical analysis that was required for this project's 25% submission has been delayed to fall 2025 until water levels on the Aspet River lower. This is a connection between West Concord MBTA station and a nearby office park. This is one of the projects that, if programmed, would help to accomplish that secondary objective I mentioned about regional funding distribution for the Magic subregion. On the next slide, we have the project I mentioned previously, which is the roadway reconstruction on Hartwell Avenue and Bedford Street. The cost estimate from September 2024 for this project is, with an additional inflation factor baked in, at about $46.2 million. This is greater than what is currently listed on project info for the project. And the project is, as a project that is listed in the MPO's long-range plan for programming and one that is unlikely to be delivered in a single construction season, proposed for advanced construction funding for $10 million in federal fiscal year 2030 and future years between now and likely the federal fiscal years 2028 to 32 tip, fully allocating that funding resource. This is consistent with the project's programming in the long-range plan, which has it programmed in the federal fiscal year 2029 to 2033 window. This project is also the second highest scoring project that MPO staff received an application for, with a 25% submission expected in either summer or autumn of 2025. Project largely focusing on sidewalks, shared use paths, and traffic calming in an area that the town of Lexington is aggressively moving to allocate redevelopment opportunities for new housing and mixed use. On the next slide, this then takes us to where scenario 2A leaves us as far as fiscal constraint. Now, worth noting, the slide that's shown on screen here in federal fiscal year 2026 is showing $2.67 million. This is $2.67 million after accounting for the cost increase on the Route 3 Bedford Road and Cambridge Street project. So that cost increase is already baked in, even though the scenarios that are before you today, the printouts, may not reflect that. In 2030, there's about $7 million of unprogrammed funding remaining in that year, leading to a total unprogrammed balance of about $16.46 million across the 5 years of the TIP. This scenario leaves the largest amount of funding in federal fiscal year 2030 of the 3 scenarios originally proposed for consideration by the TIP committee last week. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to jump alphabetically to scenario 2D, and that is because scenario 2D is very similar to 2A. Now, scenario 2D was not presented to the TIP committee at the March 27th meeting. And again, it was based on coordination that followed that meeting between the city of Boston and city of Lynn to try to develop a scenario that would act as a compromise to distribute some of the funding reallocation and delays between the Western Avenue project and the Rutherford Avenue project. Scenario 2D funds the same projects as 2A, given that that was the TIP committee's recommendation last week, and also has an identical impact on fiscal constraint across the 5 years of the TIP. I mentioned scenario 1D earlier in this presentation because scenario 2D is more of a blend of scenario 1A, which this board voted out, and 1D, in that it does conduct that funding rebalance. On the next slide, I'll show what that actually means in terms of numbers. Scenario 2A, consistent with the scenario that was voted out last week, would have the project for the reconstruction of Rutherford Avenue funded at $33.5 million in both fiscal 2029 and fiscal 2030. Western Avenue would be funded for $15 million starting in fiscal 2030. It's worth noting under scenario 2A, the total allocation of Rutherford Avenue in this TIP would be $67 million with a remaining balance for future TIP cycles at about $130.75 million. For Western Avenue, there would be $15 million in the constrained period of the TIP, with a remaining funding balance of $32.5 million to be addressed. Under proposed scenario 2D, Rutherford Avenue would be reduced by $10 million in federal fiscal year 2029 to $23.5 million. It would retain $33.5 in fiscal 2030. Western Avenue would pick up the $10 million in federal fiscal year 2029 with $15 million in 2030, leaving $25 million to be allocated on the TIP within the constraint period, and an additional $22.53 million or $54 million to be addressed in future TIP cycles. Again, as I just mentioned, in terms of net impact to future TIP cycles, financially speaking, and also to fiscal constraint across the 5 years of this proposed TIP, these scenarios are identical. They just seek to rebalance funding between Rutherford Ave and Western Ave based on discussions that the City of Boston brought to the City of Lynn, which were then relayed to MPO staff. Now, there are two other scenarios presented to the TIP committee. They were not recommended, but I still want to go through them.
No, you don't. No,
Oh,
we've,
no?
we've gone through too much stuff already.
Okay.
Okay? We voted out 1A. I don't know where 1A is in all this. I don't know what we've added to 1A, what we've taken from 1A. There's far too many scenarios. We voted 1A. What's in 1A?
So scenario 1A,
And I'm not mad at you, Ethan. I'm just totally confused.
no, I understand.
You as always do a wonderful job, Ethan, okay? Honestly. But what's in 1A?
Scenario 1A does not program any new projects or any new transit projects within federal fiscal year 2026. It also did not accommodate funding for the Cambridge Street Bike Lane or Fitchburg Crossing Design Project. And I believe it did fund all community connections projects and the 4 design pilot projects that were selected.
Right. And there may be individual projects within the list that one of these scenarios is added, that one or more of us may want to talk about and or even possibly oppose. So I am not willing to take them up as a group and say, now we're going to do 2A, right? So 1A was before us. What are the transit projects that we're trying to add to 1A to reduce whatever the FY26 balance was? Because I agree, I agree, we all sort of agreed, but let's let staff try to figure out that balance. What are those projects?
Sure. So if we can back up a fair few slides, probably about 10 slides or so, we're looking, I think it's slide 64 in the deck, if that helps.
Your deck has more than 64
Well,
slides?
the full deck
Oh,
for
full
this
deck,
meeting.
Okay,
has-
I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how many are actually in.
Because I was going to say, you weren't talking that fast.
We might need to go back.
I'm sorry.
No, we're good. I'm just trying to figure out exactly where I am.
Take your time.
We might need to go back 5 more. And there, thank you. In addition to these 3 projects, which was the Better Bus Project request by the MBTA, the bus priority accessibility improvements, and the operational enhancement request, there was a 4th transit project for $10 million that was requested by the MBTA, or I should say there were 2 others. There was one for $10 million for the pedestrian grade crossing removal at Beverly Station in the city of Beverly. There was the 5th project is not attainable within fiscal constraint. It was a $25 million funding request for the West Broadway duct bank replacement to facilitate power upgrades for the MBTA. So those are 2 projects that are not listed on screen here, in addition to the 3 MBTA projects that were incorporated in scenario 2A and others.
But so I understand the duck bank is too expensive. But is the $10 million removing the Beverly pedestrian crossing, are we proposing to add that to 1A in FY26 to reduce the balance? Are we just trying to propose these 3?
These are the 3 that are currently proposed, given the relative size of the Beverly project. I also don't know if I'd be able to speak to more of what that project is actually
No,
seeking to
that-
accomplish.
It's fine. If we're not going to talk about it, we're not,
Okay.
that's fine. All right, so does anybody have any questions about these three projects? But I have a question. So I understand that it's contracted bus service and you can purchase it, but it's an operating cost. I mean, we're buying a bus and a driver, I guess, or we're renting a bus and a driver. I'm just not sure. Like, what happens if we said no? Is the T not gonna make these improvements? And we're probably not gonna say no. I understand that. I'm just asking a question.
Our understanding is that this funding is critical to actually accomplishing these improvements. There is no funding, to my understanding, identifying the CIP to do that.
So if we said no, they couldn't find $1.875 million to improve the contracted bus service in Hingham Mill. That's what they've told you.
I don't know if anybody from the MBTA wants to speak to that, but that was my understanding.
Okay, I mean, that's fine answer. I'm not arguing. Did you want to speak? I'm happy to have you speak, but I'm not actually trying to make an argument here.
No, that's fine. This is true. This is under the Community Connections, I believe, program, and this is within the scope of the kinds of service that's funded under there. Totally understood, not capital, complementary to other improvements that are made within the same
Okay, so
package.
everybody's fine with these three. I need a motion. We're going to treat 1A as if it was voted, and it was voted. So we're going to treat it as if it's what's on the table. Okay? I need a motion to add these three projects to the TIP scenario.
Oh, well, first I have a question. Is it an operational improvement, but for how many years does this cover?
That's a good question.
Yeah, my current understanding based on what was provided to MPO staff is that the original request was a 3-year pilot for the upgrades. This covers a portion of that, I believe about 2 years of funding.
I'll make that motion to approve these.
Is there a second? Yes, wait, David Hahn. All right, Chris DiOrio. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the 714 proposal a little bit. We've been working with MBTA to look at this service, and right now this service is a flag stop bus route, and there's a lot of concern from the MBTA that it's not ADA compatible. So they're looking to do some more fixed stops as a way to get it ADA compatible, increase service, and increase some ridership as well by making it more formalized. So it's a good project, and I know that they've told us that they don't have the funds to do it, and we will work with them to try to, secure those funds, and I guess this is the way to do it.
Thank you, Chris. So Steve has made a motion to add these three projects to FY26 in scenario 1A. Is there a second? Josh Shostroff says second. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
Yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Terasi, I will return. Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Swilikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Dickens, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Naomi Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Chris DiOrio,
Chris DiOrio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Just a moment of pause here. Tyler Terasi, for this vote. Are you online?
Hi, it's yes, Tyler Terasi, yes.
That's not, hey, is it?
Thank you.
I was on another device and I couldn't unmute.
No, that's just.
Roger. Thank you for that. This motion carries.
I'll ask.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So Ethan. So what else are we proposing to add to 26 that wasn't in 1A?
Cost increases. So let me check what we got here. Because I did not have scenario 1A printed out. I'm going to need to catch that. Okay, so scenario 1A also requires an additional cost increase for the Belmont Community Path project, which was under scenario 1A, proposed at $19.7 million. This scenario would then, I apologize, I need to do a cross comparison here because I got to open everything up. Cost increase, I believe, brings it to 27.3 million, but I want to verify that for the record. So this is a proposal to bring Belmont Community Path from 19.7 million to $27.3 million, and the improvements on Boylston Street in the city of Boston from 8.66 million to $10.185 million. We would also require the cost increase to be reflected for, I believe, the Woburn Route 3A Cambridge Street and Bedford Road project. And there's one other I want to, okay. So those three projects, Cambridge Street at Bedford Road in the city of Woburn, Boylston Street in the city of Boston, and the cost increase for the Belmont Community Path to $27.3 million.
All right, so let me take Woburn first. It's going up from 3.4 million to something?
About 4.8 million.
Okay. And Belmont on my sheet is 27. Is that what it's going to?
That is what was presented to the TIP committee last week and was initially flagged for the MPO board on March 20th. That was the estimate we have been working off of in developing these scenarios and is consistent with what is on 2A, B, C at all.
But wasn't on 1A.
Excuse me?
It was not the price, it was not the cost increase on 1A last 2 weeks
That was
ago?
not factored into 1A in time because staff had learned of that on March 26th and did not have time to update 1A's materials accordingly.
All right. And then Boylston has gone up to 10.1, and that's also in the last 2 weeks.
That was also not incorporated in time for 1A, so.
So now let me ask you, so Woburn is at 25%?
Woburn, the cost increase was the result of 75%.
Okay. Belmont is at 75%?
Belmont is not at 75 as it had a rejected 75.
And it was at 2 weeks ago, we discussed how we still don't know what they're going to do to tunnel under the tracks.
I believe the submission did not include that, but there is a cut and cover plan for the tunnel under the tracks based on what the town presented 2 weeks ago.
So you think that, my question is $27 million got some plug number in for whatever we're going to build there?
Yes.
Okay. And Boylston is at pre-25? Or 25?
Boylston had a 25% submission. I think it was a resubmission in 2021, though it is being reinitiated given the scope change to omit an intersection from the project.
So this $10 million is a pre-25% design cost?
Yes, though the 8.6 was post 25% because
From
the 25
4
submission
years
from
ago.
2021.
From 4 years ago and rejected?
Yes, this 10.2 is from, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion on one or all of these to be included in FY 26? The cost increases. We can take them one at a time. We can take them as a group. Yes, Eric?
I'll make a motion to approve all these cost increases as presented by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff, Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swillikowski, yes.
Lynn Diggins,
Yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Naomi Rodriguez,
Naomi Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Mysterio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan? Still in 26, Ethan. Is there anything else?
Yes, there's the request.
And by the way, Ethan, you're doing a wonderful job with this.
Thanks. We do have a request from the city of Cambridge for $2 million fiscal 26 based on 2A. That was for Cambridge Street bike lanes. The revised request is for Fitchburg Crossing design for $2 million.
And 1A had what?
1A did not include that funding, but during the meeting did have a request from the city as part of the discussion to be incorporated.
Yeah. So 1A was voted out. So when we were here 2 weeks ago, the bicycle planner from Cambridge, I forget his name, I'm sorry about that, came in and said they would like $2 million for this Cambridge, the thing that's programmed in 1A as an earmark. I don't think the earmark is going to get obligated or spent before it lapses. They were looking for us to backfill that money. They've come in now and said, no, we don't want you to backfill that money. We'd like you to give us that $2 million for a different project, which is the Fitchburg Rail Crossing. But that $2 million, how are we going to vote? That $2 million is target money. The only $2 million that was programmed was an earmark, and the reason it was a program was because it was an earmark, okay? Now it's $2 million. They're basically asking for $2 million of target for design of the Fitchburg Rail Crossing. Yes.
Was that project scored? The one they requesting to be changed to?
Ethan, did we score? Yeah, I think Ethan said it was a really high scoring project.
79.4, I think, for the Fitchburg Crossing.
In the one before that?
The Cambridge Street Bike Lane project was not scored in time. It was something that MassDOT staff had flagged for MPO staff to consider as a result of the readiness days exercise, given the earmark was at risk.
But it was an earmark anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Eric?
Do we have funding then if it was originally an earmark and now this is a request for target funds, is there available funds in 2026?
Well, scenario 2A there is still funding for this project to be designed in lieu of the earmark. The earmark was originally programmed in fiscal 25 solely in the earmark discretionary program. This would be the first time regional target funds would be allocated to it, and there's sufficient balance to do so in fiscal 26. But the earmark will not be present in fiscal 26 as it will expire on September 30th.
Okay.
But it's tied to a separate discretionary award.
Yes, I
That has
do
only
not.
been partially obligated because they're saving money for construction?
I believe it's only partially obligated as based on the design status of the project until NEPA is completed. They're not able to obligate the remainder of the project. My recollection is that the full award for the project was at around 2.77 million. So this is a partial request with the remainder,
Right.
I believe, being what's been obligated.
So actually, I think I'm going to have to ask the city of Cambridge a question. Bill, come on up. Bill, when you got your award, you said you had the match for the design?
We do. We have a $600,000 match. It was a $3 million project, 2.4 grant, 600,000 match.
Right.
So we have the 600,000 and 400,000 that's obligated that will go towards the first phase of design, getting us through NEPA.
Right, but what did, your discretionary grant was how much money?
2.4 million.
And so your total design is going to cost you?
3.
And so you have 2.4 million of discretionary and a match.
Yeah.
I'm confused about why you need our $2 million for design.
Because of, as current discretionary grant projects are getting reviewed on the federal level. This project, which is bicycle pedestrian bridge, is bicycle oriented. That plus projects that are in low income areas have also been flagged for review. So right now we're in the middle of our designer selection process. We have a recommended team. We have not been able to get any assurance that the $2 million of unobligated funds is going to be there in the future. And the city manager is extremely nervous to move ahead with the project, knowing that that $2 million may not materialize.
Yes, Dennis?
Just a follow-up question. This is not our typical process, right?
Right.
Usually we have a list of projects that we consider to be programmed, right? This is something that had an earmark for something that was really outside our domain, actually. Money's coming from the earmark. And all of a sudden now they say, well, we don't have the earmark anymore. So we want to oh, by the way, we have another project. We want this project to be put in the program. Yeah, we're not looking at what other potential projects may be part of our normal process by we review other projects. So I feel uncomfortable, just doing this without looking at what are the other projects that may be available to be funded for this,
Thank you.
to follow our typical project. I mean, our typical process.
Anna?
So I know I'm newer to the MPO and this whole process. It's my first time going through this, but in this case, if we were to approve this 2 million, what is that going to set in terms of a precedent for other communities and other projects? Like, are other communities going to all of a sudden start coming to us because of the potential like federal, like the implications? And just, my one concern is if we approve this, then what is it going to be moving forward? Are other projects going to kind of ask here and there or come back to us?
Yeah, so I guess that sort of goes to the whole point that Bill made is there's a lot of discretionary projects that are in limbo. And at some point, we all hope this doesn't happen. Some of them may end up being unfunded. Okay. We don't know that's going to happen. Who knows, right? But some of them may become unfunded. This could set a precedent that they can come to us, and this also, they're the first in, and so it's sort of we will do this for them, and then that will be $2 million. We can't do it for somebody else. If indeed we decided we want to do it, because frankly, most discretionary projects aren't. I shouldn't say. I don't know how to say this. We didn't fund them with formula already. They're discretionary for a reason. But that doesn't mean they're bad projects. That doesn't mean we wouldn't want to fund them if we knew about them and they were great,
So if I can just add too,
please, Bill.
you may remember from last year, we did apply for the design pilot funds for this project and were approved and were the highest scoring project for design pilots. We asked that the MPO not prioritize that funding because we did just then receive the RCN grant.
Yeah.
So this project is not new for design funding. That project, we did apply for that. We were the most highly rated project. Now we're coming back because those RCN grant funds are in limbo.
All right. Questions, comments? Is there, yes, Jen?
I just wanted to note one other difference in my understanding of why you might consider this and may not be able to consider some of the other potential design pilot projects. Is that because there's already a contract in place with MassDOT that the administration of this would be an additional lift or ask? So while certainly acknowledging that this isn't our typical process, that was part of my understanding of why we could maybe make this work if the board chooses to do so.
Right. We did significant work with MassDOT on scoping of the project prior to getting the agreement signed with MassDOT and FHWA. So we have all of those agreements in place.
Other questions? So Bill, I have one more. So if we give you this $2 million, you've got a contract ready to obligate. You're going to obligate it.
And then what happens if your discretionary grant doesn't get taken back and you've got $2 million of discretionary money that you have already obligated the full contract amount to with our money?
I guess we'd probably come back and consult with MassDOT and others on what's the best route to take at that point? Are we able to obligate the 2 million for the RCN grant? I'm sure there's going to be a cost increase in FY 26 that money could get used for if it doesn't end up getting used for our design project. So I think that's something that we're open to talking about, obviously.
All right. Other questions? Is there a motion? Oh, is there a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask the question, Bill. You said you went through a procurement and to use target money. We've worked with MPO staff and OT, transportation planning staff at MassDOT to follow a certain protocol. Not challenging that you haven't followed. I just want to make sure that if there's federal target money used for design, that it had to have followed a certain, QBS selection, and there's an agreement that needs to be put in place and stuff, because we are working with other communities that were selected last year. So I just want to make sure that the city has followed all the appropriate steps.
Yeah, we've worked very closely with MassDOT staff on the scoping, on getting it out. And the one thing that we still haven't done, because we have to select a designer, do an independent cost review. But because we haven't gone to the step of actually naming the designer, because the city manager is afraid to sign the actual contract. That's the one step that we have left to do after signing a contract.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So I support this. I think Bill makes a good case that they originally were on for design funds, but then they got the grant. I do remember that. And then I think we took a vote to take them off. It is a very high scoring project. And we have the funds available. So I'm happy at the right time to make a motion to support this.
Jay, you got a question?
No, just a comment, and I feel Bill's pain here. I think there's a lot of folks who are in this position, right, with these grants potentially being pulled back. And I want to note that, in Everett, we had the $20 million raise grant for the Silver Line. And the MBTA, right, as of right now, is still stepping up saying, we're going to support the project, we're going to make sure this moves forward. So I think there's precedent generally, thankfully, amongst, our community to continue to support these projects. I want to make sure that, when we approve this, we're very careful in the context in which we approve it to prevent, I think, the risk that anybody who wants to have a design done for a project that wasn't vetted doesn't just come up here and do that, that this is a kind of a special case, that we're going to be very clear about that.
Any other comments? Tom Bent.
Mr. Chair, we support the project and, basically what Eric just said and Jay. So whoever want to make, I guess my confusion here is how to make this motion, because it's kind of like we're switching one for the other, or.
No, we're not.
Oh, okay.
We're
just putting in the
we're giving them
Fitchburg.
$2 million. They're going to spend it for, the other one's not in. We're going to put
Right,
$2
it's not
million
even
in
up now.
for Fitchburg. They're going to obligate it.
Yep.
And then if they get their grant, nobody knows what's going to happen. Okay. Go ahead and make your motion.
I'll make a motion to take out the $2 million for the Cambridge Street project in Cambridge.
No,
No, that's
not
not-
even in, because
no,
it's 1A.
The only thing
Is
in
it
here is
already in?
the
That's the one
earmark.
that's confusing.
We
Oh,
never did anything.
Oh,
I
we
came
don't
and
even-
spoke at the meeting, but we didn't do it.
Okay.
All you're doing is adding this.
All right, I'll make a motion to add the new bridge and shared use path connector over the
Design.
MBTA for design, MBTA Fitchburg line at Dennehy Park connector for $2 million in FY 26.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Dave?
David Muller,
Not because I don't like the project, but I'm voting no. I think it's a bad precedent.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, no, same sentiment.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi will vote yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brasa,
Eric Brassa, yes.
Anna Switlikowski,
Swilikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Karen Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Gishard,
Kristen Gishard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, no.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Wynn, no.
Christy Urio,
Mr. Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan?
Okay, I believe that addresses all new project or new funding uses for federal fiscal year 26 that were not included in scenario 1A. I did mention in my remarks earlier in this presentation, where is it? Slide after this one, there is the question on the, now this would take a while to litigate, but there is the question on the probability of a delay on the Route 3A project within the town of Hingham. The project is currently funded for about $22.95 million in fiscal 26. But given that there's been repeated indication by both MassDOT and a letter from the town indicating that the town is seeking a secure position in fiscal 27, that's still an outstanding issue. It is worth noting scenario 1A does not have funding in 27 to accomplish this. So it would require a later year to be done, though that is not consistent with the project's schedule, which I believe is at 75%. It could be left as is, but just mentioning it.
Go ahead, Eric. Ask a question.
I mean, I'm going to make a comment, which is, I think when we do this next year, there are a number of these projects. I think this Belmont project is we're probably going to be thinking about moving it to 27. And so I think we're going to have to, and this actually foreshadows my feeling that we should be leaving some unprogrammed funds in 2030, because I kind of have a feeling there's going to be this domino effect of projects not getting ready and like pushing projects out. And so if we're able to just leave it and not completely blow this thing up right now, I would do that and have time for the Tipper committee to talk more about what do we think is a good sort of revamped policy of expectations for readiness in certain years. That would be my sentiment.
Ethan, this project in 1A is in 26.
It's programmed in 26 with a, so it has a 33.5, I believe, $1 million budget. 22.5 is in fiscal 26, 10 million in fiscal 27.
And if it doesn't get delayed into 20, I'm really confused by this project. If it doesn't get delayed into 27, the $22 million of additional funding won't be needed? Like, I don't understand the slide.
Oh, I should clarify. If the board would wish to reflect a delay of this project into federal fiscal year 2027, because there's already $10 million there, but the project's budget is in the $33 million range, an additional $22 million of funding would need to be identified in fiscal 27, which is not currently available in the program or in the scenario. Thus, additional funding would have to be found through other changes.
And yes, Jay? Go ahead, Jay. Please.
I think
Tell me, Jay.
there's a situation that, and I brought this up before, where utility coordination and permits, like these always come up at the last minute. They always drag projects out. And we don't really get a good idea of how we can do better here. Like, and I'm not blaming anybody. I know everybody is not trying to end up in this situation, but this is one of those cyclical problems. I think I agree with Eric. Let's just leave it for now. It's because we don't know what the solution here to solve these utility and drainage permits are. We're getting ahead of ourselves trying to reprogram it to a future year. Maybe we come back next year and it's going to go to 2029 for all I know, right? Like, but let's, I think, leave it where it is. And when we really have to deal with it, we'll deal with it.
All right, does anybody want to make a motion to move this into 27? Seeing none, Ethan, go ahead.
Okay, so as far as any readiness year updates that staff have received, that is the extent of it, mostly because that's the only one in general that we've received since prior MPO meetings. Now, that does leave the question of funding availability in fiscal 2030. Based on scenario 1A, there's about $45.8 million remaining in fiscal 2030. That is after allocating all set-aside funding for community connections, transit transformation, and the design set-aside. That is after allocating funding to fully fund McGrath Highway by the end of 2030, and allocate advanced construction funding to Western Avenue and Rutherford Ave. So that's 45.8 remaining after all ongoing funding resources or funding needs. I'll also note, however, fiscal 2030 does not include the Park and Pearl Street project for the city of Chelsea. That was removed as part of scenario 1A, and the city is looking to have that be included.
Right, and 1A, so 1A left money on the table. And 1A moved the Lynn projects out to wherever they moved out. Right, and that's where we are today. So what are the projects that some group of people or have talked about adding to 29? Is that what we're adding? 30?
Fiscal 2030, that's the only year there's actually funding available for new projects. So there is the Park and Pearl Street project, which currently appears in scenarios the ones that were proposed of 2A and 2D. That was already programmed on the tip back in the 23-27 tip, but was a question of traffic coordination given Broadway project, Safe Routes project, and some bridge work that's in the area. With regard to new projects, I'll just go as far as what is in 2A first, and I'll explain what isn't in a scenario right now. Scenario 2A includes the Christina Street Bridge in Newton, the Assabet River Multi-Use Bridge in the town of Concord, the Lexington, Hartwell Avenue and Bedford Road Improvement Project, and then the Lebanon Street Improvement Project in Melrose. Scenario 2B did not fund any new projects. Scenario 2C funded the 3 highest scoring projects. That's that Lexington project again. It's the construction of the Fitchburg Line connector in the city of Cambridge that design funding was just voted on for. And then it's the 3rd and Vine Street project in Everett. For projects that are not currently reflected in any scenarios, but were also under evaluation, there's the reconstruction of Route 117 in Bolton, the Village Street Bridge replacement in Marblehead. It is worth noting, I mentioned this at the TIP committee meeting last week, that's a $5.1 million funding request. So there were certain scenarios that were initially planned to be presented where that could have also been funded. The town wanted to reiterate that after last week's meeting. And the reconstruction of Highland Avenue in Needham. I'll also note there was an additional project for the safety improvements on 1A in Wenham. That project is currently programmed in the statewide highway program for the draft STIP. So that does not necessarily need to be considered for regional prioritization. That's the totality of all of the projects that staff received applications for this past fall seeking funding, starting with 2A and grouped in order of scenario 2A, then 2C, and then the projects that are not currently in scenarios. And I'm happy to run through project costs relative to that 45.8 million or other potential uses.
All right, so does anybody want to make motion or motions to include projects in 2030? Even, let me ask a question. Should we, do we need to do the Boston Lynn thing first? Or can that come later? Doesn't matter, right?
It can come first, but it does not have an impact on fiscal 2030.
All right, so does anybody want to make a motion to include any projects in scenario 1A that are not currently included? Dennis?
So I have a quick question. Of the projects that Ethan just listed, how many are at 25%? Besides the one that's in Melrose?
The Wenham project had a 75, but as I mentioned, that's in statewide highway now, based on their draft program.
Okay.
Melrose was the only one with a 25% submission as of when the project had applied for. As I mentioned, some of the ones we expected 25s on it are getting delayed.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
So I kind of feel like, based on the conversation we had at the last MPO meeting where we, voiced concern about keep adding projects to the tip that are not at some level of 25% like submitted. And I just worry that under a lot of these different scenarios, we would be adding new projects that are not at that level. And so I would, and I do feel like, I think next time we do this, we're going to be pushing projects out. I think I would reserve some unprogrammed funds. I would also not add these projects that are not at 25% design. I would still tell to the project proponents to keep working on them. It's not that we're saying, no, we don't like your project. We're saying that we feel like we need to get stricter about what level of readiness we're gonna add things to. I'm concerned about the Hartwell project because it's a very expensive project, and that's still just PRC approved. So that would be my feeling. Would be I'm fine if John Bouchard, if MassDOT thinks that moving up the Western Ave project to 29 and reducing the cash flows for Rutherford, if they're supportive of that, then I am too. I think that's fine. But I'd be cautious about adding new projects. There is this Melrose Lebanon Street project that seems like that's the only one that is at 25% submitted. I'd be open to adding that one if we wanted to be consistent with our policy, or if we want to just keep some unprogrammed funds because we know projects are going to get pushed out. It might be wise to do that. Those are my thoughts.
Others?
Just
Dennis?
one follow-up question, if I could. How would MassDOT treat a pre-25% design on or off the tip? I've heard, people in the past say, well, if it's not on the tip, I'm not going to, MassDOT doesn't give any time to advancing the design, right? Which kind of puts you in a catch-22, right? So there may be some benefit depending on how MassDOT treats it, of being on it or being off it. How does MassDOT, what's the general guideline for that?
John, you want to take this? Want me to? I think you
No,
should.
I could take it.
You can take it, John. I'll help you.
If a project is programmed on the tip, in the 5-year tip, and a submittal is made, depending on where it's listed on the tip will establish the review cycle for the project. If it's within the first 2 years of the tip, then it gets a 30-day review. If it's in years 3 through 5, it gets a 90-day review. And that's strictly based on resources. I just don't have the resources to do everything. If a project is not listed on the tip, it's in the minimum 90-day review. And generally I go to our regional office in the districts to see what coordination they've had with the community, with the consultant, how's this project been developed? It didn't just come out of thin air. And that's generally how we try to program it. Just as an aside, Eric, I appreciate the comment. Last week at the Tipper meeting, I was one of those that voted against the scenarios for adding the 4 projects for a recommendation to the full board. My perspective, and Dennis, Tom, I take from input that I've listened to you over the years, we're programming new projects that aren't at 25%, where there was I don't want to call it unwritten rule, but we were trying to program projects that there was some progression, that we had a 25%. We weren't going to stop programming things that had not started that process. So that was my perspective in a lack of support for those scenarios last week. I just think we need to be consistent. I'm not opposed to projects getting in the pipeline and moving through it. And I believe that, and I said this to Eric, during the break when we were talking a little bit about it, getting to the public with a public information meeting, through the select board, through the planning board, et cetera, is paramount to getting any kind of success. So I want to get our project, I've instituted with the chief engineer and our project team, to conduct a pre-25 review, scoping, and conduct project public information meetings to solicit that input, to see if there's really some support for the project. I'm not saying that the design is 100%, everyone loves it, but that there's general support, that the community is supportive, and we're going to have some bartering of cross-section and impact versus, so I want to get that out there sooner with the project. But I just think that this board has tried to make a commitment to keep, we'll list projects when they get to 25%. And I just think adding new projects at this time is a little disingenuous to what the board overall had been trying to, steer towards.
Follow-up question, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
I just want to make sure that I understand what you said, John. One was that if you have certain 30 or 90 day, if you're within that. If you're outside of the tip, right, you'll look to the district office to give you some input into what their perspective is. And what you're looking for is relatively strong community support for that project.
I'm looking for community support in that the district has been engaged with the community on the project, and it meets all of the parameters of our standards and things like that.
If they met that criteria, you would work on that design, you would advance that.
We would have it in that 90-day pipeline.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, thanks.
Other questions, comments? Josh?
Thank you so much. Healthy discussion. I guess for clarification, would folks have a similar feeling about projects that are on the tip, or are we really looking just to have more clarity on like what's being proposed to be added? I think that's something that a proponent would just want to understand.
Eric?
So I feel like we've said, once you're on the tip, we're gonna commit to you. Although I do think that we need to now, over the course of the next year, discuss what that means. And I think that needs to change a little bit. And I think we need to say, okay, we need to see some like progression and we need to have that discussion. I think we need to also, really telegraph that to our cities and towns. So for me, it's really about these newly proposed projects. The one project that I feel like is now caught in limbo is this Chelsea Park and Pearl Street project, because they essentially said, yes, we know we're not ready, so we're okay with you taking us off. We never put them back on. So Ethan has put them on in a couple of these scenarios, but Ethan, I think we need to proactively take a vote to do that, correct? Because they were not included in the 1A.
Yes, I can answer it. The answer is yes.
I would just like to note real quick, I don't know if Len Diggins still has his hand up, but I think he might have had his hand up for a while.
Well, hold on a second, because I'm also Eric answered from his perspective. I'll answer from my perspective.
Okay.
So 2 weeks ago, I voted no to a motion to develop this thing, because I think we've developed it. I think we do this every year. We keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Our tip is broken. We all agree our tip is broken. MassDOT takes full responsibility for our share of how much of it, John's not here, for our share of how much of the tip is broken. But the concept of, once you're in the tip for life, where a project has gone 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, and not gotten to 25% design is just self-defeating and for MassDOT's purposes, not something that we will continue to support. It won't necessarily matter because we don't, we're only however many votes we are, whatever, right? But I take your point, Josh. It's sort of, we could all look at the sheets and there's a bunch of projects that are pre-25 that we're not trying to move out. But at some point you have to start, I guess. Now, yeah, Josh, you can go and then I'll call in because I was responding to your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. It was somewhat a rhetorical question. I think that we're in an evolving world with a couple of things. First, a lot of very worthy projects coming forward, but limited capacity, and then concerns about what will our resources be in the years to come, whether it's tariffs, normal cost escalation, any number of factors. So I understand why the gate might feel more strict in 2025 than it might have been a few years ago. I just would say for proponents, they need more clarity and visibility. And while we joined you in voting no to the last time, I do think that is something that more clarity is going to be needed, and to understand what are the rules, how will they be applied, and what's the reason for them, and context, because I think that for many folks who are steeped in this, they understand this. But there are many who don't, and they're important stakeholders too. So just wanted to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Lynn Diggins.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly didn't mind waiting. And so I agree that we shouldn't put anything that isn't 25% design, and I would even say approved new projects in the TIP. I mean, our problem, our challenge is with those projects that we are already on the TIP. And so I have a question before I have more to say. What kind of assistance do we provide to communities? When they are at the PRC approved status? Because it seems to me that's the problem that we have, is that projects don't seem to be able to move me from PRC approved to 25% design. And I'm not sure what the reason is for that, but does MatStop provide any support for them?
John, you want to take this one?
Thank you for the question, Len. When a project is approved by PRC, and a letter is issued to the community, there are certain requirements that are laid out. It's a multi-page letter that goes to the community and says, this isn't a guarantee of funding, but it says that the project is eligible and seems like something that fits within our parameters, et cetera, and then gives them a little bit of a timeline. The community then goes out and solicits engineering proposals and starts the process. But our local offices in the regions and the districts, generally, and our program team here in headquarters are available to those communities to help. And we instituted the program team just in the last 2 years to help with projects that were getting to final design, and then the scope was changing and was causing, unbalance in the STIP. It was causing additional right-of-way and permitting and things like that. So I came up with, I think the program team, let's scope the project properly. Let's stick to the purpose and need of the original project and hold the line. If there's something within those project limits or just outside those project limits that maybe wasn't considered during the original scoping, we try to look at it as a separate project, because it could derail something that's been going through a 3, 4, 5 year cycle. And we look at I'll balance the need to modify the scope, permitting, right of way, et cetera, versus doing something as a standalone or as a separate project or something like that. But our team is available at MassDOT from our regional offices, as well as our program and design team and headquarters to help communities, go through this process.
But I'm sorry to interrupt me. I'm getting a lot more than I wanted, because I'm after a very specific answer. When we do we help them go from PRC status to 25% with any financial support at all? Because I think communities often just
No, the answer is absolutely not.
Okay, all right. Because it seems like they get stuck at that point. It seems like one of the reasons we put projects on before they get to 25% is so that they can somehow get the momentum or whatever to get to that 25%. So I'm just trying to make sure that when I say I support not getting projects on before they're 25% approved, I'm not saying to these projects, you're never going to get on the TIP, because there's no way, you can come up with the wherewithal to get your project to the 25% design stage, because you need to be on the TIP in order to get there. That's all. Thank you.
Right. But Lynn, our assumption is when a community comes to us and asks for PRC approval, they support the project and know that they are responsible for design and right-of-way, and have planned to fund the right-of-way, the design and ultimately the right-of-way. And if communities don't understand that, then maybe we have to have a better communication with communities. But it's not like they should be coming to us with projects that they don't actually want to do.
No, I appreciate that, but it just seems like we have projects that aren't moving beyond the PRC stage, and it's not clear to me. I wouldn't even say it's not clear to me. I have no idea why they can't get past that stage. If you all do, it'd be good to know, so that we know how to push these projects that aren't at at 25% design to that point, means so that we can either like keep them on the tip, or we can say, look, I mean, you've been on 6 years, you haven't gotten to the 25% design stage, we're going to take you off.
All right, Lynn, I don't want to be, I'm trying desperately not to be snarky to anybody, and certainly I would never be snarky to you. But we just had a member of this, an employee of the city of Cambridge come to us and say they have a design contract ready to go, but their city manager won't sign it because he's not sure that the money's going to be there from some federal source, right? The issue is a local issue, right? And I understand, okay, that there's not money anywhere. And if there's not money for the local government to do the 25% design, then either they should apply through our design program, because we actually have tried to address that, or they should, MassDOT is trying to develop our own sort of thing for some smaller communities who don't have the wherewithal, okay?
Right.
We're not there yet, but we're trying to. Or they should just not propose a project, right? If you do not have the funding for design, then you shouldn't propose a project, because our answer is you're responsible for design.
Okay, I get it. Thank you. And it's okay if you're snarky with me. I won't be offended. Okay,
I'm trying never to be snarky with anyone, but especially you, Lynn.
I appreciate it.
So, I'm sorry, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Kristen, and
Thank
then
you. So I appreciate all the comments that have been stated today, and really the desire to retain some fiscal, constraint in 2030, not knowing where things may bring us, and also the desire, to have that 25% design as a threshold, and trying to establish some more concrete policies and goals and benchmarks moving forward. I think at the last Tipper committee, I advocated for including these projects primarily because of the very low proportion of funding being allocated to the Magic communities. I was able to reach out to get an understanding for myself about design funds that were committed, because I wanted to make sure that these weren't just projects that maybe had enough to get over a little bit of a threshold, but needed to go back to town meeting to keep that project going. Because I know often in local communities, it is a piece by piece to get that support, to show that there's momentum where the community can believe, okay, we will get design funds, we're moving forward. I was hoping that Ethan may be able to talk a little bit about the commitment of funding, because it's my understanding that at least for Concord and Lexington, design funds are committed, and that the submission for 25% is very, very, very soon. And so I just wanted to make it clear, those were my thoughts moving into this. I think I have a concern that if we are at 1% now with Magic funded projects, and we have nothing programmed out in 2030, and we keep getting projects pushed off further into the TIP, into further years that are actually at the same level now with the PRC approved but haven't moved forward. But then they keep getting pushed out. Does that leave no funding for Magic? And where do they end up, in the next few years? So that was my hope.
Ethan?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So I cannot speak entirely to the funding commitments on all of the projects. I will say that some project proponents that did submit comment letters, I'm namely thinking about the town of Lexington here, because they, I think, had the most information, had laid out the totality of the design commitment for not only Hartwell Avenue, but also the other design project for the interchange relative to ongoing municipally designed efforts in the project area. So to my immediate knowledge, the only one that I know of that has funding resources allocated for advanced design stages beyond 25 is Lexington, but that is not because other projects don't. It's just because that is not something that MPO staff have been tracking. I don't know if other proponents want to speak to theirs, but.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sort of just adding a little bit on to what Kristen was saying about municipalities often kind of budgeting design dollars annually to keep that going. I think there's a there's just a difference in cost if you are designing a Mass DOT project or if you're designing a project that you're putting out internally from the city or town, and it is not inconsequential. And so when something is in the tip or recognized, there's a conversation that happens in terms of why a municipality is putting forward additional dollars than they normally would to meet MassDOT standard. So I don't know if this is part of the conversation that maybe does go back to Tipper in terms of when we're setting those policies around really what do we want. I think we need to understand what municipalities need to do, both to, get into the universe, but then how to get to 25% and then how we're looking at it at the MPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Jay?
So for these projects that are pre-25%, Hartwell Ave and a few of the others, the cost estimate with those, is that a cost estimate from PRC approval or is that a cost estimate that they provided? They're all very close to 25% submission, right? So is that cost estimate in line with that latest design, not yet submission, but status?
As a process improvement from last year's TIP, as part of applications to the federal fiscal year 2030 TIP, we had asked project proponents to provide updated cost estimates beyond what was necessarily listed in project info. So they are more advanced than the PRC estimates. In some cases, Lexington, I believe, just because that was mentioned, or actually I'll use Lebanon Street in Melrose because it has a 25% submission that is not currently reflected in project info. For Lebanon Street, as an example, that's listed here for $10.5 million. In project info, it's still listed at $4 million. So these scenarios are reflecting estimates based on what the proponents said the projects would cost, based on what their consultants had told them the latest estimate was, not necessarily project info. In Lexington's case, I believe it's listed at 38 million in project info, 47 here. And that's also a similar condition. I think, for example, Third and Vine might be at 8 or 9 and it's listed for 13 here. So
I think that's an important point. I do generally support Eric and others' perspective that this might be the year where we hold off on programming new projects. My other perspective on that is we've been here last couple of years, which is we have so little money in that outer year. We're kind of cherry picking projects as opposed to really taking a nice big group and evaluating them, properly, I guess is not the right term, but we have projects that are 2 years out that are still 25% design. It won't kill anybody if we don't fund 2030 and next year we bring on a whole bunch that are, at 25% submitted. So that's kind of where my head's at.
Kristen, do you have a second follow-up?
It was just a follow-up on the funding in terms of the Concord Assabet River multi-use path. They did have funding fully committed. And I believe there was some additional structural engineering work required by MassDOT. But they have CPA funding that they're planning to move forward with.
Thank you.
Or to request.
Others? David Koz.
Thank you. So I understand the conversation and the concerns about 2030. Of course, still prefer 2A or 2D, but we'll go with the group. But I did have a question back in 2026 that I'm still confused about, if I can just clarify that.
David.
Just because I was, I pulled out my my old scenario 1A from a couple weeks ago, and I was just trying to compare it with the 2A and the 2D. And in terms of the community connections, that's what it doesn't seem like it was on 1A for 2026, but it is in 2A and 2D. Could you just confirm that we have the community connections projects in 1A in 2026?
yes, so 1A for 26 included, I'm just going to go in alphabetical order here as they appear on the scenario spreadsheet for 1A. Acton reconstruction of Route 2A 119 Great Road design, Boston Blue Bike Station replacement, Brookline Blue Bikes expansion, Cambridge Blue Bike Station replacement, Chelsea Blue Bikes expansion, a $43,000 line item for air quality sensor procurement for MPO staff for the performance-based planning program, approximately $910,000 for the Mass Central Rail Trail, Linfield Rail Trail construction phase 1, that is construction, it's at 100%. $800,000 for the city of Malden for Route 60 design, town of Marblehead, bicycle rack procurement, and city of Newton, $470,000 community connections. And then last two are Salem Broad Street and Dalton Parkway corridor design and Somerville Blue Bike Station replacement. Those were all listed in 1A.
Right, so we don't have to amend
Oh.
them in, they're already there.
Yes.
Okay, so I must be looking at an old version or something.
Consolidated under one less single line in the spreadsheet. It's under 2026 other new projects. all of the
Oh.
projects.
Okay, so where it says Community Connections Program 0 for 2026, that's because it's included somewhere else.
It's the 2026 view.
Okay,
Yeah, just for the.
just making sure.
If
Thank
you
you.
don't mind, just so I can say it on the mic so it gets picked up on the record. Just for the record there on the simplified scenario spreadsheets, community connections projects for scenario 1A and other scenarios, including for the two batch, are listed under a consolidated line item indicating community connections projects and other smaller projects on that spreadsheet. Thanks.
All right, so, yes, Jen, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one additional item I just wanted to bring to the conversation because it's come up at the TIP committee and some of my conversations with members individually, is this a sentiment that that being on the TIP itself allows a community, especially a community that, you know, unlike Boston, needs to go to town meeting to request funds to be able to speak to a project being real, having some funding commitment to it, and that kind of facilitates them being able to receive the design resources they need to get a project to 25%. So I wanted to kind of just make sure that was also part of this conversation, and that, you know, if we're not, I guess my fear with not moving some projects forward in this cycle is kind of drying up the pipeline of new projects if those projects aren't able to kind of leverage the kind of vote of endorsement that this board brings to them.
All right, so none of these projects or any of the other projects that Ethan mentioned when he went over the whole list of things that aren't in scenario 1A are in scenario 1A. Does anybody want to make a motion to add one or more of these projects? Yeah, go ahead, Kristen, please.
I'll take a stab at it. I'll make a motion to move the 2030 new projects, Melrose, Newton, Concord, and Lexington forward.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the four projects?
Motion to move the 2030 new projects, Melrose, Newton, Concord, and Lexington forward for inclusion in 2030.
Is there a second? David Kosis.
David Kosis Newton seconds that.
Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
No, again, not because I don't like these projects. It's just a process issue for me.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, no.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, no. Feeling similarly to
Tyler Terasi, I'll return to Sarah Lee.
I'm sorry. Tyler Trossi, yes, my apologies.
Not a problem. Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee's a no.
Eric Brasa,
Eric Brassa, no.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Sulikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, no.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Nayeli Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, no.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, no.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, no.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, no.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, no.
This motion does not carry at 10 for yes and the remaining as no.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion on any other projects or any subset of these projects or the Chelsea and Pearl Street project? I don't want people to feel like we didn't take up something somebody wanted to take up, so. Anybody want to make any other motion? Yes, Steve Olenoff.
Yeah, I move that we include Jesseline Melrose Lebanon Street project.
Because it's at 25%.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostroff, yes.
Tyler Terassi, calling again Tyler Terassi,
Yes, Tyler Terassi votes yes.
thank you. Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brasa,
Eric Barassi, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swillikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Dickens, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Naomi Rodriguez,
Natalie Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Chris Diorio,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other motions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second? Did we, are we releasing this or we didn't discuss the MassDOT project yet or the T project yet? Are we just approving this now and then? we'll
This
do
is
the
just a
tip?
scenario. Draft tip would come back to the board April 17th.
All right, so can I get a motion and a second to approve the scenario for inclusion in the draft tip that will be presented whatever day Ethan said it was?
So moved.
Is there a second? Good. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll. No, I'm sorry, Jen, I thought you seconded. You want a question? Wait, motion hasn't been seconded. Don't call the roll. I'm sorry, Jen.
I had a quick question. So my understanding is we haven't incorporated the Chelsea Park and Pearl.
Yes,
in this-
nobody made a motion to do that, so it's not.
Okay. And also the current scenario leaves
Oh, yeah, I forgot. that part.
Lynn
I forgot
out in
that part.
2030.
So can you hold your motion? I totally forgot that.
I never made a motion.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion just to ask the question on Chelsea's Park and Pearl at this time? Seeing none. Does anybody want to make a motion on what was scenario 2D, which is swapping out some money from Rutherford Avenue for, Ethan, explain it. Moving Western in to 29. Thank you, Ray. Does anybody want to make that? I'll make the motion. All right, Tom Mitt makes the motion.
I'll
Is there a
second that motion.
I'll make that motion. There's a motion and a second. And to be clear, what the motion is to reduce Boston's Rutherford Avenue project from 35.5 million to 20 million in FY 29 and to program Lynn's Western Avenue project with that funding. Is that right?
Yes, that was consistent with scenario 2D as initially presented.
Excellent. Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Sure. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. Sorry.
John Bouchard,
Yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostrov, yes.
Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brasa,
Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switkowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Natalie Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Christy Ario,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now, can I get a motion to include this scenario as the regional project scenario for the tip that Ethan's going to present in May?
May I just ask one just quick question?
Certainly may.
That motion was just for Lynn and Rutherford, not inclusive of Park and Pearl?
Yes.
Okay.
We moved, asked about Park and Pearl separate. Nobody moved it.
Okay.
All right. So can I get that motion? Yes, Eric?
Eric Barassa, I'll make the motion to incorporate all the motions that were approved today into the recommended federal fiscal year 26 to 30 tip for discussion and ultimately release at the next MPO meeting.
Is there a second? Tom Bent.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion having been made and seconded, please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
Bouchard, yes.
Josh Ostroff,
Ostrov, yes.
Tyler Terasi,
Tyler Terasi, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brasa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Hannah Switlikowski,
Hannah Swilikowski, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Nayeli Rodriguez,
Natalie Rodriguez, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Christy Ario,
Chris Diorio, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I would like to note, just for the record, that it was clear from all of the discussion that none of the votes today were about the individual projects, okay? And I would encourage the communities to keep moving their projects forward, because if indeed they get to 25% in the fall, you know, we will be doing tip amendments in the fall. We'll be doing tip amendments in the winter. It is always appropriate for any member to move a project as a tip amendment at the appropriate time. So really, please, anybody who's out there listening, this was not about the worthiness of the projects. We just are trying to reset our programming process. Yes, Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, we've had really a lot of good discussion around the process, design process, how we advance projects and so forth. I really don't want to lose the momentum. I'm wondering if I'll make a motion or just by chair directive, if we look to the TIPA committee to look at what improvements we can make in that design, come back to this full board with some recommendations and some thoughts.
Yeah, I believe that was actually the motion that passed 2 weeks ago.
Okay, okay.
Against my vote.
Okay, I wasn't here, so.
But yes, we absolutely want to do that. But yes, we absolutely want to do that. Yes, we absolutely want to do that.
Tom set me up. He wanted me to ask again.
Next item is member items. Are there any member items? Taken, I think you have one.
Madam Member, yes, happy to make, just a reminder for folks who are going to be attending the UPWP committee meeting in person after this. It will commence in about an hour. But again, please, if you'd like any guidance getting through security and or identifying the location of the room, please stand by in the room and staff will help you navigate that. Otherwise, we will see you at 2:30. Those of you who are committee members who are attending in person or virtually otherwise.
Are there any other member items? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Any objections? Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.